Executive Order N-29-20. I now want to go to roll call and establishment of a quorum. I am calling upon Ms. Reed, our Board Relations Analyst, to take the roll. Members, as Ms. Reed calls your name, please unmute your microphone, state your name, and respond that you are present, and then mute your microphone. At the end of the roll call, Ms. Reed, please advise me as to whether we have a quorum. Thank you.
Nancy Corrigan.
Nancy Corrigan, present.
George Familet.
George Familet, present.
Mary Jiang.
Mary Jiang, present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, present.
Dan Jacobson. Dan Jacobson. Soshi Leon.
Did you get Dan Jacobson present?
Okay, we have you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I apologize.
Soshi Leon.
Sochi Leon, present.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Luz Molina Lopez, present.
Carola Nicholson.
Carola Nicholson, present.
Dee Dee Owens.
Dee Dee Owens, present.
Ariel Pay.
Ariel Pay, present.
Katrina Salazar.
Katrina Salazar, present.
Michael Savoy.
Savoy here.
Mark Silverman.
Mark Silverman, present.
And Yin Tu.
Yen Tu, present.
Thank you. And we have a quorum for the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'd like to continue now with some opening remarks. I would like to thank CBA staff and the solid team for their efforts in helping to make the transition to a virtual meeting and the training that was provided. This will be the first time that the CBA has conducted a virtual meeting, and a process that we may be following for some time to come. In the coming days, staff will be sending a survey to CBA members seeking feedback regarding this meeting and ways that we can improve upon it. I encourage all CBA members to take the time to complete the survey. CBA staff have been working tirelessly to adapt to the new ways of working while at home and for limited times at the office, and doing their best to continue with CBA operations. For many of them, this has involved adapting to homeschooling and other trying situations and being flexible to a completely new approach to daily life. I appreciate their loyalty to the goals and objectives of the CBA during very difficult times while trying to stay well and look out for the well-being of their families. This has been an extremely taxing time for them, and just as I would expect, they continue to excel. I want to move on to the board committee assignments, which were sent to you and which are in your materials in the back for your information. Typically, as you recurring board members know, we have committee meetings just prior to the full board meeting. That would be the Committee on Professional Conduct, the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, the Legislative Committee, and the Mobility Stakeholders Group. Staff and the solid team are working to organize breakout sessions so that we may continue with these meetings virtually as we have in the past. For right now, those items are being covered and folded in with the regular CBA meeting materials. And new members, who I will introduce shortly, if you do not see your name assigned to a committee, please do not be concerned. We like you to get your feet wet just a little bit before we guide you into the deep end of the pool. So that will be forthcoming. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirements that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Members of the public who are interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. All lines are currently on mute. As I facilitate this meeting to allow for proceeding in an orderly manner, lines will remain on mute until I direct staff to open them for public comments. I will announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues, and staff will open the lines as appropriate. 5 minutes will be allotted to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate the meeting and ensure the board has the opportunity to complete its necessary business. I appreciate everyone's understanding. At this time, the staff moderating the meeting will provide some general instructions. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the moderator. Welcome to the California Board of Accountancy board meeting. Before we get started, I would like to remind board members and staff who are not speaking to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will briefly provide a brief reminder or simply mute microphones. I will, board members and staff, if we do have members of the public in the audience and meeting minutes are being taken, so please identify yourself before speaking. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the board's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by clicking on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of their WebEx window. These instructions on the screen will be shared each time for your reference. So thank you, co-moderator. At this moment, we do have instructions on the screen, and these are the ones that we will put up each time public comment is requested. In the Ask field, typically located at the bottom right of your WebEx screen, members of the public who wish to make a public comment will type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send it to all panelists. Any other communications will not be responded to. Members of the public, it is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make a public comment. I will take the comments in the order that they are received. I will call on a member of the public and unmute their microphones. Members of the public will have 5 minutes to make comments, and a 30-second time warning will be provided before the conclusion of their time. The microphone will then be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who had requested to make a public comment. Please note the Q&A feature is only being used as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once unmuted, the member of the public may verbally state their comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries will not be responded to. If any attendees utilize profane name or profane language, they will not be called on to prevent members of the public from being subjected to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members and public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to the board.
Thank you. I would like to now proceed with Agenda Item 1, Report of the President, Nancy Corrigan. I would like to introduce a new California Board of Accountancy member, Ms. Dee Dee Owens, CPA. Her bio is in your materials and posted on the website. This appointment was by Governor Newsom just this month. So welcome, Ms. Owens. We look forward to working with you and hopefully meeting you someday in person. Thank you. Agenda Item 1B, introduction of another new board member, Ms. Yan Tu. She was appointed by the Senate Rules Committee in February of 2020. And again, her bio is within your materials, board members, and also posted on our website. Welcome to you, and we look so much forward to working with you. Congratulations on both of your appointments. Moving on to agenda item C, I'd like to introduce newly assigned Department of Consumer Affairs Legal Counsel, Ms. Helen Joffrey. And welcome, Ms. Joffrey. We are delighted to have you join us, and we look forward to one day meeting you in person as well. I'm going to move on to agenda item D, report on the meeting with the Governor's Office regarding appointments at the California Board of Accountancy. On February 14th, Vice President Savoy and I attended a meeting with personnel from the Governor's Appointments Secretary Office. And this was very important given the fact that basically we have a new administration in California government and the Governor's Office, and we also have numerous members soon retiring from the board. So we discussed such things as upcoming member retirements, qualifications the CBA is looking for in the members, including participating in CBA activities and leadership skills, importance of the mix of professional and public CBA members, the appointment process and the Governor's involvement in reviewing candidates and his dedication in appointing members, and the importance of having a quorum at every meeting given that we have time-certain agenda items, we have administrative law judge scheduling, we have court reporter scheduling, we have attorneys at times on both sides of a matter being scheduled, we have petitioner schedules, we have other important decisions that the CBA makes. We discussed our committees, the CBA committees, and we discussed our advisory committees and what they all do. We discussed how California is different in that we have two types of licenses unlike other states. We discussed the mobility process for CBAs within and outside of California. We concluded that it was a very successful meeting, that we broadened the Governor's appointment Secretary's Office knowledge of what our board does. They were very appreciative of receiving this information as well. There are no questions for me on that report. I'm going to move along to agenda item 1E. That is a resolution for retired CBA member Jose Campos. Mr. Campos served on the CBA from December 14th, 2012 to July 7th, 2020. During this time, he served as president of the CBA in 2015 and vice president in 2014. Mr. Campos was well respected as a valuable member of the CBA, and he will be greatly missed. At this time, if any member would like to make a motion, please use the raise hand feature. Once I call your name, unmute your microphone, and please make the motion to accept this resolution. Ms. Nicholson?
I so move to accept this resolution for Mr. Campos.
And if any member would like to, Ms. Nicholson, please go ahead and lower your hand. And if any member would like to second that motion, once I call your name, unmute your microphone and make the second.
I second.
Ms. Salazar?
Hi, this is Katrina Salazar. I'd like to second the motion for the resolution for Jose Campos.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Are there any additional members that have comments regarding this motion and the second? Please show by raise of hands. I will do my best to find your hand and call on you. Seeing that there are none, I now need to turn the meeting over to the moderator to any members of the public that would have a comment.
This is the moderator. I see Jason's hand is up.
Hi, this is Jason Fox of the California Society of CPAs. I just want to recognize Jose. He was certainly an active and engaged board member and undertook a lot of important things on behalf of the board and the profession, and particularly with his work on the mobility stuff. So fully appreciate Jose and recognize his accomplishments on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the moderator again. At the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. And I am sharing on the instructions on the screen for your reference. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of your screen, type, "I would like to make a comment," and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reed will now call for the vote. Once she calls your name, members, please unmute your microphone and respond with your vote, and then mute your microphone.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu,
Yes.
and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm going to move on then to agenda item 1F. This is a resolution for retired Qualifications Committee member David Evans, CPA. Mr. Evans served on the Qualifications Committee from March 20th, 2014 to March 31st, 2020. During this time, he served as chair of the Qualifications Committee from 2017 through 2018 and served as vice chair in 2016. The CBA certainly appreciates Mr. Evans' years of service. And I'm now going to request a motion to adopt this resolution. If you will raise your hand to make a motion. Mr. Jacobson?
I so move.
And now I'm requesting a second to that motion. Mr. Familet?
Second the motion. I second the motion.
Is there any further discussion from the members? Seeing that there is none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments on this matter.
I apologize. I was still muted. I see George's hand is up, so we'll call on George and then we'll open it up. I'll give instructions for public comment.
I think I left my hand up, so I will lower that now. Disregard my hand, I guess.
Thank you so much. So at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comments. For members of the public, just click on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of your screen and click "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please.
It has been closed.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, at this point, would you please call for the vote?
Nancy Corrigan, yes. George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez. Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Carola Nicholson.
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens.
Yes.
Ariel Pay.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
And Yin Tu.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm going to move now to Agenda Item 1G, which is a resolution for retired Enforcement Advisory Committee member Joseph Rosenbaum, CPA. Mr. Rosenbaum served on the Enforcement Advisory Committee from May 24th, 2012 to May 31st, 2020. During that time, he served as chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee from 2016 through 2019 and vice chair in 2015. The CBA extends its greatest appreciation to Mr. Rosenbaum. And with that, I am asking for a motion to adopt this resolution by a raise of hands, please. Mr. Famlet?
Yes, motion to adopt?
You, and do I have a second to that?
Second.
I'm not now. Ms. Salazar, for a second, please.
Second.
It keeps shifting back and forth. Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Is there any further comment or discussion from the members? Seeing that there are none, I will turn this over to the moderator for public comments.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature at the direction of the board. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. So I have an individual identified as Doug Aguilera who would like to make a comment. Doug, I will unmute your microphone and I will provide you a 30-second warning once your 5 minutes are almost up. And your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, this is Doug Aguilera. I'm the current chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I took it over from Joe. I've known Joe the entire time that he served on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. And I want to, first of all, thank Joe, but also to let you all know that I've known Joe during that time, and my impression is that serving on the Enforcement Advisory Committee was one of Joe's favorite things to do. I know that that is the case for me now, taking over from Joe. He gave a lot to the Enforcement Advisory Committee, the Board of Accountancy, and has been a great mentor to me. So I just wanted to thank Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Board President, there's no further request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
It has been closed. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Aguilera. Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote?
Nancy Corrigan. Yes. George Familet.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Carola Nicholson.
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens.
Yes.
Ariel Pay.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm going to move on to agenda item 1H, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants Committee interest for 2021-22 volunteer year. It is a written report only. Some of us do participate on those committees. It's very important for members to consider this and participate to continue to build our valuable relationship with the AICPA. And now agenda item 1.1, which is discussion and possible action on the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy's revisions to the Uniform Accountancy Act model rules. Ms. Center, our Chief Licensing Division, your first opportunity to appear at a board meeting. Welcome, and I turn it over to you.
Good morning, President Corrigan, members of the board. I'm Michelle Center, Chief of Licensing at the CBA, and I will be presenting item 1I. So happy to be here, and I wish I could meet you all in person. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board with an opportunity to review and discuss the NASBA exposure draft related to proposed education requirements in the model rules. The exposure draft can be found as attachment 1 in your materials. The CBA is being asked whether it wishes to issue a comment letter to NASBA on the exposure draft. Attachment 4 in your materials is a comment letter that has been drafted for your consideration. Please note that President Corrigan has identified non-substantive changes to be included in the final draft of the letter. For your reference, NASBA developed the model rules with the goal of promoting uniformity in the regulatory scheme governing the practice of public accountancy in the various licensing jurisdictions. The model rules are not regulations themselves, but serve as suggestions for how states may regulate in their specific jurisdiction. California, similar to some other states, does not use the model rules verbatim in our state law or regulations. As stated in the written item before you, the proposed changes to the model rules in this exposure draft relate to educational requirements, and it should be noted that the CPA Evolution Initiative is the catalyst for the proposed changes. As a reminder, the CPA Evolution Initiative aims to modernize the CPA licensure model to adapt to the changing skills and competencies that the practice of public accounting requires today and in the future. As such, the exposure draft reflects changes proposed by the NASBA AICPA CPA Evolution Initiative, which the NASBA UAA Committee reviewed and recommended to the NASBA Board of Directors to release for public comment. Those changes include such things as modifying what entity is responsible for recognizing an accreditation agency, small changes in unit requirements to address principal and introductory courses, limits on internship units, and reference to courses in data analytics and data interrogation techniques. The item before you includes a comparison between the exposure draft and California law and regulations. In summary, the comparisons result in a recommendation to not make any changes in California at this time. CBA staff will continue to monitor the changes proposed by this exposure draft and may bring before the board at a later date regulatory changes to consider if it is deemed appropriate to do so. As I conclude, I would like to remind the members that the proposed discussion and decision for you today is whether a comment letter in response to the exposure draft should be submitted to NASBA, and if so, if the draft letter in attachment 4 with non-substantive changes by President Corrigan is approved for submission. With that, I will turn the item back over to President Corrigan and am available to answer board member questions.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Members, do we have any questions for agenda item 1I for Ms. Center? Please raise your hand. Ms. Nicholson?
Yes, thank you. This is Carola Nicholson. Do we know why they're requiring additional units of education under 5.2?
Thank you for your question. I am unable to really answer and determine why some of the proposed changes were made. That information was not included in the exposure draft information.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for Ms. Sender from members? Seeing that there are none, may I have a motion to accept staff recommendation by raise of hands? Mr. Jacobson? Motion, Mr. Jacobson? Ms. Nicholson?
Nancy, I so move.
Okay, Mr. Jacobson has made a motion, and now do I have a second? Ms. Nicholson?
I second that motion.
Is there any further discussion amongst the members, from the members? Seeing that there is none, I will turn this over to the moderator for any public comments on this agenda item.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comments. A friendly reminder to board staff, board members to lower your hand once you have already called on to be spoken. So members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type, "I would like to make a public comment" in the ask field and send it to all panelists. And this is the moderator, board president. We haven't received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, will you now please call for the vote?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm now moving to agenda item 1J. This is discussion and possible action to amend Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Sections 98, 99, and 99.1, disciplinary guidelines, substantial relationship criteria, rehabilitation criteria for denials, suspensions, revocations, restorations, reduction of penalty, and adopt Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 99.2, directly and adversely related financial crime criteria. Mr. Franzella, our Chief Enforcement Division, thank you.
Good morning, members. My name is Dominic Franzella, and I am the CBA's Chief of Enforcement. So the purpose of the agenda item today is twofold. The first is to provide the California Board of Accountancy the opportunity to consider any public comments that we received, either written or oral, and provide any responses that are necessary. And the second is to provide the CBA an opportunity to adopt proposed amendments to Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Sections 98, 99, and 99.1, and to adopt a new regulation, Section 99.2. So the CBA is being asked to consider and adopt positions on whether to accept or reject, including in whole or in part, public comments received, and then to adopt the proposed text in Attachment 8. As this rulemaking package has been developed over the past year plus, in your materials for this item, and specifically on pages 2 through 4, I've included an overview of the development of the regulatory language that was exposed for public comment. The overview is for the January, March, and November 2019 CBA meetings and discusses the information members considered in 4 main areas: substantial relationship criteria, rehabilitation criteria, disciplinary guidelines, and the development of a new section called directly and adversely financial crime criteria. So as noted in the materials, the driving force behind the changes to the substantial relationship criteria and the rehabilitation criteria, as well as the addition or the need for an additional new section related to the directly and adversely financial crimes criteria, was necessitated by the passage of legislation, specifically Assembly Bill 2138, which we included as Attachment 1 to your materials. Again, in the background section, the CBA considered revisions to the substantial relationship criteria over multiple meetings in January and March, seeking to craft the regulatory or the regulation to properly implement AB 2138, as well as provide increased clarity on the application of the substantial relationship criteria. Additionally, for the rehabilitation criteria, the CBA explored this over all 3 of the highlighted meetings. With each iteration, the CBA was seeking to address the implementation, again, of 2138, as well as increase the clarity and applicability of the criteria. Lastly, for the newly developed directly and adversely financial crime criteria, the CBA endeavored to create a new standard by which to evaluate select felony convictions that fell outside the 7-year washout period for most crimes that exist for denying of licensure. So in addition to the development of the regulatory language, I've also included a high-level overview of the rulemaking process state agencies undertake when seeking to adopt, amend, and or repeal regulations. Most notably, the rulemaking process seeks to provide a meaningful method for the public to participate, which is achieved through a 45-day public comment period, which often includes a public hearing to receive oral and additional written comments. The 45-day public comment period concluded on June 3rd, with staff having conducted a public hearing on June 26th. With the public comment period and hearing now concluded, the CBA needs to take steps to finalize the rulemaking process, including considering any public comments and adopting finalized text, which may result in another 15-day public comment period. So looking first to the public comments, prior to considering the finalization of any regulatory text, the CBA must first address the public comments it received. In attachments 2 through 4, I've included 3 documents: the Notice of Proposed Action, a document called the Initial Statement of Reasons, and the originally proposed regulatory text, which will assist the CBA in considering any public comments. And beginning on page 6 of your materials, information regarding public comments the CBA actually received. The CBA received 2 written comments on the proposed regulatory text, one from Thomas Spitter, CPA, and one group letter from 20 separate organizations, which is being referred to as Root and Rebound. As part of the required rulemaking process, the CBA must now consider these comments and take steps to accept or reject a comment in whole or in part. The CBA must include responses and rationale for accepting or rejecting a comment, and include the responses in what's comments in what's called the final statement of reasons, which is included in the completed rulemaking materials for the Office of Administrative Law's consideration in the approval or disapproval of a rulemaking file. Mr. Spitter's public comment is in attachment 5, and the root and rebounds public comment is attachment 6. So to ensure the CBA has fully addressed the public comments for each of the comment, staff have provided a summary and a proposed response, including whether to accept or reject the comment. These responses take up the vast majority of the agenda item and begin on page 6, on the bottom of page 6, and continue on through the middle of page 14 of the item. As the root and rebound letter contains a multitude of comments, both general and specific, staff have divided the summaries and proposed responses into individual comments. Additionally, staff have created attachment 7 to aid in reviewing and identifying the comments staff summarized together. The letter received is only altered in attachment 7 for this purpose, with staff having highlighted each of the comments summarized in a different color and placed a text box noting the comment number before each section. Otherwise, attachments 6 and 7 are identical. So to ensure the CBA is on record as having reviewed and considered each comment and provide rationale for each comment, for this presentation, I will first identify the comment, the page the comment is on, a brief overview of the summary comment included in the materials, and a summary of staff's recommended response, including whether to accept or reject the comment. After each comment, I will turn discussion back over to President Corrigan to provide for member input on the comment and consideration of the position. As members considered the staff's recommended response, the CBA could support staff's proposed response of accept or reject, as well as the summary rationale, support staff's proposed response of accept or reject, but amend the summary rationale, and provide staff with information on how to update the rationale, or adopt a different response of accept or reject. If the CBA takes a different position on a response, it will need to provide staff with a thorough rationale for the position, so this can be added into the rulemaking. Additionally, if the CBA accepts a comment that ultimately results in the modification of text, the CBA will need to identify how the text was modified. At the conclusion of the discussions on this item, the CBA can take a motion to handle all the public comments it received and how the CBA addressed them, how the CBA addressed those comments. So the first public comment we'll be looking at is for Mr. Spitter. Mr. Spitter's comment is on the bottom of page 6 with the staff rationale concluding on the top of page 7. Mr. Spitter's comment is related to a personal matter. As such, staff proposed rejecting this comment as he fails to address any of the proposed regulatory text. So with that, at this time, I'll turn discussion on this over to President Corrigan for further member input if any is needed.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Members, do you have any comments regarding this specific item that Mr. Franzella has just mentioned? Please raise your hand to be called upon. And seeing that there are none, Mr. Franzella, I will ask you to please proceed.
Thank you. So the first of the 5 summary comments for root and rebound. Again, the root and rebound comments, the original comment letter can be found on in attachment 6, and the highlighted version and the different colors labeling or grouping of the comment that was summarized as they were thematically similar and addressed in different aspects of the proposed text is found in attachment 7. And again, in total, this created 5 different comments that we sought to summarize and address. So summary comment number 1 is on page 7 of the item. The commenters believe that there are gaps in the regulatory scheme the CBA is proposing to address AB 2138. Additionally, the comment states that the proposed regulations fall short of the intent of the bill, which includes combating discrimination against people with records who have demonstrated rehabilitation and seek to establish themselves professionally. So the staff response, also beginning on page 7, recommends the CBA reject the comment. Consistent with the requirements enacted by AB 2138 for the substantial relationship criteria found in CBA Regulations, Section 99, the CBA is proposing regulatory text with and required by Business and Professions Code, Section 481, and which would assist the CBA in implementing a balanced approach to evaluating an applicant's eligibility for licensure. Additionally, the CBA is proposing adding several new rehabilitation criteria to CBA Regulations, Section 99.1, and these are specifically subsections A6 through 12, clarifying how to determine whether a crime is substantially related and clarifying the factors that will be considered when evaluating rehabilitation should assist applicants and licensees with demonstrating their rehabilitation. So at this time, I will turn discussion on this over to President Corrigan for member input.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions or comments in relation to this specific item for Mr. Franzella? Please raise your hand. Seeing that there are none, Mr. Franzella, please proceed.
Thank you. Summary comment 2. This comment is on the bottom of page 7 and continuing on to the top of page 8. The commenters believe that the proposed regulations related to substantial relationship criteria in CBA Regulations Section 99 fails to comply with AB 2138. Additionally, the commenters expressed their opinion that the section fails to note that criminal history that resulted in the applicant obtaining a certificate of rehabilitation, pardon, dismissal per Penal Code Section 1203.4, or an arrest that resulted in the disposition other than the conviction shall not be denied a license. Lastly, the commenters object to the newly added section in CBA Regulations Section 99, subsection C4, that it is vague, overbroad, and unclear. The staff response, which begins on page 8 and continues on to page 9, recommends the CBA reject the comment. The CBA made the required changes to the substantial relationship criteria as necessitated by AB 2138 by including the 3 items noted in the response in subsection B of the proposed text. As to the argument made regarding failure to include a note stating the CBA shall not deny a license in cases where the criminal history led to a certificate of rehabilitation, pardon, or dismissal per Penal Code Section 1203.4, or an arrest resulting in a disposition other than the conviction, is asking the CBA to unnecessarily duplicate statutory text and regulation. Further, Business and Profession Code Section 480, Subdivision B, prohibits license denial if the applicant has obtained a certificate of rehabilitation, was granted clemency or a pardon, or has made a showing of rehabilitation per Business and Profession Code Section 482. Since these are already specifically addressed in the statute, adding them again in regulation would be duplicative. Finally, concerning the commenters' concerns regarding the proposed amendment to CBA Regulation Section 99, specifically subsection C4 as being vague, overbroad, and unclear, without additional articulation of what is vague, overbroad, and unclear, the CBA cannot further address the concern. The CBA provided its rationale for inclusion of this new subsection in the initial statement of reasons, again, which I have briefly restated in the proposed response. So at this time, again, staff are recommending that the CBA reject this this comment, and I will turn discussions over to President Corrigan for member input.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Members, by raising your hands, if you have any questions or comments on this specific comment item for Mr. Franzella. Raise your hand, wait for me to call on you, but seeing there are none, Mr. Franzella, please proceed.
Thank you. So summary comment number 3, this is near the bottom of page 9 and continuing on to the top of page 10. The commenters argued that the proposed rehabilitation criteria are inconsistent with AB 2138 inasmuch as the criteria provides for a review of the individual's history of violations. Additionally, the commenters include suggestions and examples of rehabilitation to expand the criteria included in the CBA Regulations, Section 99.1. The staff response, which begins on page 10 and continues to the top of page 11, recommends that CBA reject the comment. Only criminal records subsequent to the record giving rise to the denial, suspension, or revocation may be considered. And as it relates to additional rehabilitation criteria, the proposed text provides for other factors to be considered and thus does not preclude the applicant from submitting evidence they believe supports rehabilitation. So at this time, I will turn discussion over to President Corrigan for any member input.
Mr. Franzella. Members, by raising your hand to be called upon, do you have any questions or comments regarding this specific comment item for Mr. Franzella? Seeing that there are none, Mr. Franzella, please proceed.
Thank you. Summary comment 4. This begins on page 11 and continues on to page 12. The commenters suggest incorporating the Department of Fair Employment and Housing's regulations regarding consideration of criminal history in the employment decisions. The commenters also argue that maintaining a directly and adversely standard of relatedness that does not match the factors of the substantial relationship regulation, the CBA has sets up, or quote, the CBA sets up 2 different standards. And they also offer 3 factors that should be added to the directly and adversely standard to more align it with the substantial relationship standard. Finally, the commenters argue the CBA should only consider felony financial crimes that are, quote, directly and adversely tied to the qualifications, duties, and or functions of a certified public accountant, end quote. The staff response to this, which begins on page 12 and continues on to 13, recommends the CBA reject the comment. The legislature could have continued to apply this standard of substantial relationship. However, the legislature sought to differentiate these types of crimes and have the select entities develop a new definition around a new standard of directly and adversely. Further, the legislature could have required the CBA or other select DCA entities to include minimum specified criteria similar to what is required and as part of similar to what is required as part of the substantial relationship criteria that's already existing in Business and Profession Code Section 481, yet the legislature did not do that. Realizing that the legislature established a new standard, the CBA seeks to tie the financial harm to the direct and adverse impact to having a direct beneficial benefit to the applicant or another person, or direct financial harm to the other person or entity. So at this time, again, we are proposing that the CBA reject the comment, and I will turn discussion on this matter back over to President Corrigan for any member input.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Again, members, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Franzella in connection with this specific comment item? Please raise your hand. Seeing that there are none, please proceed, Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. The last summary comment for a root and rebound letter begins on page 13 and continues on to 14. The commenters enumerate 6 items they believe the CBA should incorporate into the proposed regulations. These are on pages 6 and 7 of the letter. Numbers 1 through 4 and number 6 are addressed in this summary comment, with the number 5 of their enumerated list having been summarized and addressed as part of the summary comment number 3. These additions are several items found in Business and Profession Code Section 480 and include, for example, the 7-year washout period, that individuals are not required to disclose information or documentation regarding criminal history, and various statistical items required by AB 2138. So the staff response is on page 14, which recommends the CBA reject the comment. Regulation should not indiscriminately incorporate statutory language. In each of the enumerated requests, the commenters seek to have the CBA incorporate unnecessary and duplicative statutory language into the CBA proposed regulations. So at this time, I will turn discussions back over to President Corrigan for any member input.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Members, are there any questions or comments in connection with this specific comment item for Mr. Franzella? Please raise your hands. Seeing that there are none, Mr. Franzella, please proceed.
Thank you. So now that the CBA has reviewed and reviewed on the public comments, it can now look to take the necessary steps to adopt the regulatory text. There are two options for adopting the text, which I have included on pages 14 and 15 of your item. Option 1 would be a motion when no changes are being sought to the originally proposed text, while option 2 is a motion where substantive changes are being made and will require a renotice and a 15-day public comment period. So staff have incorporated some proposed substantive changes for the CBA to consider, which are highlighted on pages 15 and 16 of your materials. These include changes to the rehabilitation criteria in CBA Regulations Section 99.1 as requested by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the DCA Legal Office. Another change is to the newly directly and adversely standard found in CBA Regulations Section 99.2. Each change is noted in double strike through and double underline in Attachment 8. So if I can direct members' attention to page 16 of the item and the recommendation section, staff are proposing that the board take two motions. One thing before I move on, I'd like to highlight there were some additional non-substantive minor changes that President Corrigan had noted to the disciplinary guidelines that staff will incorporate and address for Attachment 8. So again, moving to page 16 in the recommendation, staff are looking for two recommendations. The first is to address the public comments, and staff have provided a recommendation under the heading public comment. And for the second motion, staff are seeking related to the adoption of the proposed regulatory text. This would be consistent with option 2 to issue to make substantive changes that will result in the renotice and a 15-day public comment period. So with that, President Corrigan, I will turn it back over to you, and I'll do my best to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. That was a very thorough, excellent, and complex section that you and staff have handled. Really appreciate that. Members, do you have any questions or comments at this time for Mr. Franzella? Please raise your hands. Seeing that there are none, can I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation? Ms. Farrell-Hines.
Move to adopt.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. And may I have a second? Mr. Savoy.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from the members? Mr. Jacobson?
Seems like there were two motions. Which one are we voting on? One was about the comments, and one was about the adoption of the regulation.
Ms. Hines, would you like to restate your motion to break that into the two components, please, in relation to the staff recommendation on page 16 of 17?
Yes, approve. The first recommendation is to approve the modified regulatory text. And, well, do we want to do it as just one motion? Are we able to do it as just one motion, or are we able to do it, in its entirety? I think we should just do it in its entirety based upon the recommendation.
That we can do it in its entirety. Is that your motion?
Yes, based upon recommendation from staff.
Mr. Savoy, would you like to second that revised motion?
I do.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the members? At this point, then I will, seeing that there are none, Mr. Savoy, I believe your hand is still up, but I believe it was for the vote, or for the motion. Thank you. I will now turn it over to the moderator for public comment.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, click on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions on the screen for your reference. In the Ask fields, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen, type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote and then inform us of the result?
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
I abstain for the reasons that I stated before about including personal judgment in the regulations.
thank you. Soshi Leon,
Yes, and if I can just have a quick comment, and sorry, I'm just pivoting back and forth, but I just wanted to acknowledge the nonprofit and the legal organizations for taking the time and providing that, thoughtful comment and challenging us to think about equal access and improving our processes end to end. So just want to recognize the hard work there. So thank you.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Yin Tu.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm going to move now on to agenda item 1K, discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 87, Basic Requirements, 88, Programs which qualify, 88.1, Provider Requirements, 88.2, Program Measurements, 89, Control and Reporting, and 90, Exceptions and Extensions. Mr. Franzella?
Thank you. Again, good morning. I am Dominic Franzella, and I am the CBA's Chief of Enforcement. For this item, the CBA is being asked to approve proposed regulatory text to CBA Regulations Sections 87, 88, 88.1, 88.2, 89, and 90. These sections are part of the CBA Regulations on Continuing Education, or commonly referred to as CE. At the July 2019 meeting, members reviewed and discussed an exposure draft issued by the American Institute of CPAs and the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy on proposed changes to the Statement on Standards for Continuing Professional Education. The final standards as adopted by these organizations are found in Attachment 1 to this item and took effect on December 2019. While California does look to the standards for guidance on CE, it maintains its own rules and requirements, which are outlined primarily in the sections before members today. Unlike other states that require licensees to select CE from approved providers, California outlines programs that qualify, provider requirements, and program measurements, and places the obligation on the licensees to select CE from appropriate providers. As I noted in the paper, the CBA is still in the process of enacting amendments and additions to our regulations that are a result of a prior revision to the standards. The changes proposed in the prior standards were considerably more substantive, especially as it created two wholly new methodologies known as nano and blended learning, and established new definitions for technical fields of study. The newly released standards, the ones in Attachment 1, are not nearly as substantive. They make some minor changes to the language around nano and blended learning and some other non-substantive changes. The more significant changes in the newly released standards are the establishment of a new learning methodology of adaptive learning self-study And they also added an additional education tool for self-study programs termed content reinforcement tools. So on pages 2 and 3 of this item, I have outlined the more notable changes, including references of where to find them in the standards in Attachment 1. In Attachment 2, staff have incorporated the necessary changes to establish a new learning methodology for adaptive learning self-study and included the minor changes to the nano and blended learning. Additionally, staff have made some minor changes to the regulatory language to improve clarity and consistency. So as the language from the revisions arising from the changes to the standards that took effect back in 2016 are still pending, these are noted in single underline and strike through. For the new modifications being considered for changes of the standards in Attachment 1 that took effect 2019, these are noted in double underline and double strike through. And these also include any additional changes staff made for clarity and consistency. So on that note, staff have been working with DCA Office of Legal Affairs on the previously referenced package. DCA recently sent additional revisions on July 9th to the language. Based on action by the CBA today, staff will work to incorporate the language approved today and continue to address DCA's requests. So this will in all likelihood result in the language coming back to the CBA for review and approval prior to any notice being published and official rulemaking started. So as an additional step, staff would like to inform the CBA that a project will be initiated to perform a more in-depth review of the CBA regulations related to CE. The purpose is to retool the format and structure of the regulations to create more consistency with the standards. As the standards continue to expand and retool, the present structure used within the CBA regulations is making it ever more challenging to effectively incorporate the proposed amendments. As new methodologies are being considered and added, and as modifications to existing methodologies involved, it has proven cumbersome to effectively incorporate the changes while maintaining the degree of readability and clarity. As staff progress on the project, it will work with CBA leadership on when best to place on the agenda for future CBA consideration. On pages 4 and 5 of the item, which is also the staff recommendation on the PowerPoint slide, staff have included a recommendation for the CBA to initiate a rulemaking to effectuate additional changes to its CE standards. So at this time, I'd like to turn discussion on this item over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer any members' questions.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Members, do we have any questions for Mr. Franzella in connection with agenda item 1K? Seeing that there are none, do I have a motion to accept staff recommendation? Mr. Jacobson?
I so move.
Mr. Jacobson, and do I have a second? Ms. Salazar?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or comments from board members? Seeing that there are none, I will turn it over to the moderator to request public comments on this agenda item.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with a question mark located in a square at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions on the screen for your reference. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen, type, I would like to make a public comment, and send it to all panelists. And Jason Fox, your hand is up.
Hi, Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs. I just want to acknowledge the board's staff's efforts on putting these regulations together. I know it's a cumbersome task to tie everything together, but we appreciate the addition of these new delivery methods and the updates to the NASBA model rules. I think this is going to add a lot of flexibility to the licensee population, particularly in a post-COVID virtual world. So We appreciate the board's efforts on this and looking forward to working with board staff as we kind of clarify and clean up some of the CE regulations, and we offer our input as stakeholders through that process. So thank you.
Board President, no further requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And thank you, Mr. Fox, for your comments. We appreciate hearing those. Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote and then provide us with the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I will now proceed on to agenda item 1L, which is a written report as the California Board of Accountancy 2020 Legislative Tracking Chart in your materials. Moving on to agenda item 1M, update, discussion, and possible action on legislation which the California Board of Accountancy has taken a position. I'll turn agenda items M, 1, 2, and 3 over to Ms. Pierce, our Assistant Executive Officer. Ms. Pierce?
Thank you, President Corrigan, and good morning. The legislature returned to session briefly in June to pass a budget, but are now in recess, and they will return to session on Monday, July 27th. CBA staff have been monitoring the evolving legislative landscape as typical bill offerings have been abandoned for COVID-related legislation. Assembly Bills 802 and 1525 and Senate Bill 51 were originally introduced in 2019 and are considered two-year bills. The CBA has previously taken positions on these bills as reflected in the legislative tracking chart included in your materials. There has been no substantive changes or action on these items since the CBA meeting in January. However, I'm available to answer any questions you may have. I will turn it back over to President Corrigan.
Are there any questions for Ms. Pierce from the members? Seeing that there are none. So moving on to agenda item N, 1 through 6. N is review and consideration of possible positions on legislation. I'm going to turn this back again to Ms. Pierce, our Assistant Executive Officer.
Thank you again, President Corrigan. The bills identified in agenda item 1N were either introduced or amended to include language of interest to the CBA. And Enforcement Chief Dominic Franzella is going to present the first item, Assembly Bill 1616.
Thank you. Again, my name is Dominic Franzella, and I'm the board's enforcement chief. So, Assembly Bill 1616. Under current law, if an individual wishes to have their arrest or criminal conviction record expunged, that person must petition the Superior Court and follow established procedures. Upon a successful petition, they are granted a certified expungement order. AB 1616 would require the CBA and all other boards within DCA, which has posted on its website that a person's license was revoked because of a conviction of a crime, upon receiving a certified copy of the expungement order from the underlying offense, to take certain action. The board must post notification of the expungement order and its date on the board's internet website. If that person reapplies for licensure and has been relicensed, the board must remove the initial revocation posting on its internet website, as well as any information previously posted regarding arrests, charges, and convictions if the person is not currently licensed and does not reapply for licensure. The CBA would need to take action on the request within 90 days of receiving the expungement order. As identified in the analysis, there are many issues with the proposal that would either create issues during implementation or be counter to the transparency that the CBA employs with regards to its enforcement actions. On page 5, staff note that we do not have a recommendation on this bill, but have provided 2 options for the CBA consideration. As an additional note, this measure is currently in the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee. Based on COVID-19 impacts, the legislature's schedule for committee hearings has been impacted. It is staff understanding that only a limited number of bills will move forward this year. Next week, when the legislature returns from recess, it is likely that policy committees will meet and make decisions on many bills, including AB 1616. If the bill makes it out of the policy committee next week, staff will work with the author's office on any possible amendments the CBA may seek. So at this time, I will turn this back over to President Corrigan for discussion and possible motion on a position, and I'll do my best to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Franzella regarding this item? And if there are no questions, would someone like to discuss the oppose unless amended or support if amended options? Staff have no recommendation on this, so we need to discuss whether we choose to oppose unless amended or support if amended, or take no action at all right now. Mr. Jacobson. Do you have a comment? Moderator, can you check the status of Mr. Jacobson's connection?
Sorry. I believe that we can adopt a watch position, which is what I would suggest.
Can you correctly, Mr. Jacobson, you're recommending that we take a watch position?
That's correct.
Any discussion from any other members? Ms. Leone?
I second the motion to have a watch position and see how this unfolds.
Thank you. I think we were kind of still discussing it. I want to go ahead and just see, Ms. Tu, do you have comments in connection with this item?
Yes, that was pretty much my comment, is what Mr. Jacobson was recommending, that we take a watch position at this point.
So I have a first and a second to take a watch position on this item. Any further comments or discussion from members? Seeing that there are none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions for your reference. In the Ask field, type I would like to make a public comment and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. And Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Sochi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Errol Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Ms. Pierce, would you continue then with agenda item N2?
Thank you. Assembly Bill 2028 was amended following the distribution of the meeting materials, and I apologize that we were not able to get out a revised analysis, so I'd like to provide an overview of the current amended proposal. AB 2028 impacts the time frame that writings or materials in connection with a matter subject to discussion or consideration at a meeting held pursuant to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act shall be made available on the Internet website and to any person who requests the writings or materials in writing. The proposal initially required that the writings or materials be made available on the same day as the dissemination of the writings and materials to members of the state body, or at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, whichever is earlier. The amended version of AB 2028 now proposes to require that the writings or materials be posted to the website no later than the first business day following the dissemination of the writings and materials to members of the state body, or at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, whichever is earlier. So essentially, as it would relate to the CBA, it would provide staff one additional day to get the materials posted to the website. An additional amendment requires a state agency, upon receipt of a written request for writings or materials provided to members of the state body in advance of the meeting, to provide those items immediately. Further, the author has provided some flexibility regarding the discussion of the materials if the materials being discussed are from another state agency, are posted to the website and provided immediately upon request. An exception remains for legislative and items discussed in closed session, and an exception was also added for discussions on state financial materials that put the treasurer at a competitive disadvantage in financial transactions. Currently, written materials may be provided to the members and made available to the public at any time, including at the time of the meeting. This measure is currently in the Senate Governmental Organization Committee. Even with the amendments, staff continue to recommend that the CBA adopt a watch position on AB 2028. And I will turn it back to President Corrigan for discussion and possible motion.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Pierce regarding this item? Ms. Tu?
Just requesting the right item be on the share screen.
On the screen, but we don't have it.
Ms. Tu, I apologize. The slide that was created for 2028 was done prior to the amendment, and so I can display it. However, it would have not the most recent information, so I do apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from members? Ms. Hines?
I would like to move that we adopt a watch position on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Do I have a second? Ms. Nicholson?
Yes, I would like to second.
Any further discussion from the members? Seeing that there is none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments on this item.
This is the moderator. I see 2 hands up from the board members.
for prior motion and second. Thank you.
Thank you. I have opened the Q&A at the request of the board. Members of the public, if you would like to participate, click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I am sharing the instructions on the screen for your reference. In the Ask field, type, I would like to make a public comment, and send it to all panelists. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and give us the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Ms. Pierce, please proceed with agenda item 1 and 3.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 2113 would require licensing boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs to expedite the initial licensure process for an applicant who supplies satisfactory evidence to the board that they have been admitted to the United States as a refugee, granted asylum, or have a special immigrant visa as specified. The bill specifies that nothing in the bill will be construed as changing any existing licensure requirements, and that any person applying for an expedited license must meet all statutory and regulatory requirements. Presently, Business and Professions Code Section 115.5 requires DCA boards to expedite the licensure process for an applicant who meets one of the following requirements: is married to or in a domestic partnership or other legal union with an active duty member of the Armed Forces of the United States assigned to a California duty station under official active duty military orders, or holds a current license in another U.S. jurisdiction in the profession for which the applicant seeks a license from the board. This measure would benefit those individuals that are identified in the analysis on the bottom of page 1 and top of page 2. This measure is presently in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. Staff recommend the CBA adopt a support position on AB 2113. And I will turn it back to President Corrigan for discussion and possible motion.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Pierce? I see some hands are raised. Ms. Molina?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Corrigan. I'm sorry, just a point of clarification, Ms. Pierce. I believe you just mentioned staff recommends to support the position. However, the literature that we received on page 2 for AB 2113 states the recommendation by staff is a watch position. Can you please clarify?
Yes, I apologize for that. I had used a template on my talking points, and I think it got carried over. So I do apologize. Staff recommend the CBA adopt a watch position on this measure.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Ms. Joffrey?
Hello, yes, I'd like to make another point of clarification. It says that Business and Professions Code Section 115.5 allows us to expedite licensure for applicants who meet both requirements, and that is supported by law, but during the summary, it said either requirement. It is supposed to be both.
Yeah. Thank you
for that clarification. Very good. Ms. Zhang?
Yes. When they say expedite, it doesn't say what time frame we're talking about expedite. Is that like something in 2 weeks, 30 days? I mean, right now for general licensing, our department, CPA licensing department is trying to get licenses approved in 30 days. So how fast of an expedition are they referring to?
Response from Ms. Young. Ms. Pierce?
Thank you. Presently, if the applicant had that information included with their application, they would basically get bumped to the front of the line and processed as expedited as we could. But they would basically get moved up to the top of the pile.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? I see some hands remaining that I think were there before.
No, I had a question. This is Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines.
Okay, Ms. Hines, thank you.
Thank you. So I originally was raising my hand to move to adopt the position because I thought because of the support recommendation, but now that it's changed to a watch, I have a question as to why we would adopt a watch position as opposed to a support position.
I think it's really up to the board in terms of the position that they want to take. This was a little bit different than some of the prior bills that we have taken a support position on related to the military, but it's certainly in the purview of the board to take a support position if they like.
Thank you. Do I have a motion in that regard?
Actually, this is Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines again, if I could follow up on that, on Ms. Pierce's answer. So the bill is pretty sparse, and because the memo doesn't provide any other, details, I just wanted to be clear as to whether there were some concerns that staff had about adopting a support position, or whether there was any additional details about how you see this differentiating from the related bills, AB 1904, that we have adopted a support position. I'm just trying to figure out if there's some rationale for why we would not adopt a support position consistent with other bills that are similar to this one.
No, there's no concerns from the board's perspective, or from staff's perspective, regarding taking a support position. Certainly up to the board either way.
Thank you. Do I now have a motion in that regard?
This is Ms. Hines again. I would move to adopt a support position on this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. And do I have a second from a member? Jacobson?
I second that.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion from the members? Seeing that there are none, I will turn it over to the moderator for public comments.
This is the moderator. I have instructions on the screen here. If you would like to comment, please click on the icon question mark and click on the ask field. I would like to make a comment and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and please provide the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon? Soshi Leon, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes, I vote to support.
Carola Nicholson,
No.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Ms. Reed. Mr. Jacobson, I see that your hand is raised, but we've just completed voting. And I'm going to move forward on the agenda to agenda item 1 and 4. Ms. Pierce, please continue.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 2549 adds the California Board of Accountancy and 3 other boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs to a list of boards required to issue a 12-month temporary license to qualified applicants within 30 days. However, the bill specifies that the provisions shall not apply if a board has a process in place by which an out-of-state licensed applicant in good standing who is married to or in a legal union with an active duty member of the United States Armed Forces is able to receive expedited temporary authorization to practice while meeting state-specific standards for at least 1 year. Under existing CBA statutes and regulations, CPAs with an out-of-state license in good standing are, with minor exception, valid to engage in the practice through existing mobility provisions contained in BPC 5096. This provides immediate practice rights and can continue until the individual obtains a California CPA license. The CBA will not be subject to the bill's requirements, nor will the CBA have to adopt new regulations, since the CBA already provides for expedited licensing and an authorization to practice if an applicant meeting the specified criteria is licensed in good standing in another state. This measure is currently in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. Staff recommend the CBA adopt a support position on AB 2549, and I will turn it back to President Corrigan for discussion and a possible motion on the position.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, are there any questions in connection with this item? Seeing that there are none, do I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation? Ms. Molina?
Thank you. Yes, this is Luz Molina. Thank you, Ms. Corrigan. I had a question actually about the related bill as part of the literature that we received on page 3. Do we know what happened to AB 186, which was a similar bill related to this one, which is AB 2949? No, sorry, 2549.
It was chaptered, so it was approved back in 2014.
Thank you. This is Luz Molina again. I move to adopt the staff's recommendation to support to a support position on AB 2549.
Thank you. And do I have a second to that motion? Ms. Young?
Yes.
You're providing a second. Any further discussion from the members? I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with the question mark at the bottom of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions for your reference. In the Ask field, type "I would like to make a comment" and send it to all panelists. For President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and then provide us with the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Dan Jacobson, Mr. Jacobson, can you please repeat that?
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Moving on to agenda item N5. Please continue, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. The analysis on Assembly Bill 3045 was sent in the second mail out, just for members' reference. Assembly Bill 3045 would require the California Board of Accountancy and several other boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs to issue full licensure to an applicant who meets the requirements identified on page 1 of the analysis. Unlike similar provisions in law for other boards, this bill does not call for the issuance of a temporary license, but a permanent license with only a signed affidavit that they have met the requirements. This proposal lacks consumer protection components by not providing a mechanism to quickly terminate or revoke the license if the information attested to is false. This measure is currently in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. Staff recommend the CBA adopt an opposed position on AB 3045. And I will turn it back to President Corrigan for discussion and a possible motion.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Any questions from the members? Ms. Young, I believe your hand is up from before, unless you have a question regarding the current item. Seeing that there are no questions, do I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation? Mr. Jacobson.
I so move.
Thank you, and do I have a second? Mr. Familet.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Familet. I have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion from the members? Seeing that there are none, I'm turning it over to the moderator for public comment.
The moderator. Just a friendly reminder to all board members, after you've been called on, to please lower your hand. At the direction of the board, I've opened the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, please, if you're interested, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your screen. I'm sharing the instructions for your reference. Type, I would like to make a public comment in the ask field and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and then provide the results?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Thank you. I abstain. I'm not locating the literature in my mailed out packet, and so I'm not going to vote on this one.
Carola Nicholson?
Sorry. Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Errol Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm continuing with agenda item 1 and 6. Ms. Pierce?
Thank you. Senate Bill 878 would require each board within the Department of Consumer Affairs that issues licenses to prominently display on its website processing timeframes as identified on page 1 of the analysis. The CBA is already posting timeframes on social media and will soon post them to the website. In light of increasing processing timeframe beyond the CBA's 30-day goal as a result of COVID-19 and the CBA's office closure, providing this increased information on the website is beneficial. The measure is currently in the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. Staff recommend the CBA adopt a support position on SB 878. I will turn it back to President Corrigan for discussion and a possible motion.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Pierce? Ms. Hines?
I'd like to move to adopt the staff recommendation of a support position on SB 878.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Do I have a second? Nicholson?
Second.
Yes, I would like to second.
Second from Ms. Nicholson. Thank you. Any further discussion from the members? Ms. Hines, do you have further discussion?
No, sorry.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no other comments from board members, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. The Q&A feature has been opened. Members of the public, if you're interested, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Ms. Reed, would you proceed with the vote and then provide us with the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson? Dan Jacobson? Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar? Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm moving on to agenda item 1O, that is review and possible consideration of positions on legislation the California Board of Accountancy is monitoring. That is a written report only provided in your materials. Moving on to agenda item 1P, legislative items for future meetings. There is nothing to report at this time. Agenda item Q will have to occur after 1 p.m. When our presenter is available. So I would like to move on to agenda item 2, report of the Vice President. Mr. Savoy.
Thank you, Madam President. Agenda item 2 is the recommendation for reappointments to the CBA statutory committees. Prior to making these recommendations, I have conferred with the CBA executive officer to verify that the individuals have met the appropriate requirements and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to to serve on each of these committees. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. Due to cancellation of the May CBA meeting and to ensure that the Enforcement Advisory Committee did not have any issues with meeting quorum at its July meeting, President Carr again made an interim reappointment for Jose Palma. I recommend that Kathy Johnson, CPA, Jose Palma, CPA, and Nazi Rosarian, CPA, be reappointed as members of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. If any members would like to take each appointment individually, we'd be happy to do that if you'd wish to raise your hand. If not, I'd like to turn it back to President Corrigan to ask for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Are there any questions for Mr. Savoy on these items? And I think it's quite appropriate to go ahead and approve these three in one motion. So may I have a motion? Ms. Farrell-Hines?
Yes, this is Ms. Hines. I would like to move to approve the recommendation for the appointment of all three members together.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. And do I have a second? Ms. Nicholson?
Yes, I would like to second that motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the members? Seeing that there is none, I'll turn it over to the moderator for public comments.
This is the moderator. Friendly reminder for all the board members to lower their hand once they've been called on. I've opened the Q&A feature. Members of the public, if you would like to participate, click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your screen and type "I would like to make a public comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please do. And Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote and then provide us with the results?
Nancy Corrigan? Yes. George Familek? Can you repeat that, please? Yes. Mary Jiang? Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Mr. Savoy, would you continue with Agenda Item 2B?
Thank you. The Qualifications Committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. Due to cancellation of the March and May CBA meetings, and to ensure that the Qualifications Committee did not have any issues with meeting quorum, President Corrigan made interim reappointments for Charles Hester, Sr., CPA, Nazi Razian, CPA, and Kimberly Sugiyama. I recommend that Charles Hester, Nazi Razian, and Kimberly Sugiyama all be reappointed to the Qualifications Committee. And if anybody would wish to take it individually, I would move it back to President Corrigan to ask for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Are there any questions, members, for Mr. Savoy regarding his recommendation? Seeing that there are none, and I think it is quite appropriate to vote on these in one motion. May I have a motion? Ms. Nicholson?
Yes, I move to reappoint the candidates for the Qualifications Committee.
And do I have a second? Mr. Jacobson.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion from members? Seeing that there is none, I will transfer this to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature at the direction of the board. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and click I would like to make a comment in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and provide us with the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yen Tu?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Mr. Savoy, would you please continue with agenda item 2C?
Yes, thank you. The Peer Review Oversight Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity in its oversight of the peer review program. I recommend that Alan Lee, CPA, be reappointed to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I'll turn it back to President Corrigan ask for a motion.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. Savoy? And if there are none, may I have a motion? Ms. Jiang?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Alan Lee to the Peer Review Oversight Committee.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Familet. Any further discussion from the members? Seeing that there is none, I'm turning it over to the moderator for any public comments.
Public comment has been open in the lower right-hand corner. If you would like to make a public comment, go ahead and click on the Q&A icon and type in I would like to make a comment in the Ask field and send to all panelists. Madam Moderator, Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any public comments. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote and then provide the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yen Tu.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Seeing that we're just a few minutes before lunch, I am going to take agenda item 8 out of order. These are the meeting minutes. And I'm going to ask whether there's any discussion regarding the minutes of January 16, 2020. And if not, may I have a motion to adopt them? including some non-substantive edits that were made after distribution to the members. Ms. Hines?
Move to adopt.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
I don't recognize the second. Who was the second from?
Ariel Pay.
Thank you, Mr. Pay. I appreciate that. Any further discussion from the members? And seeing that there is none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comment.
I have opened up the Q&A panel in the lower right-hand corner. If you would like to make a comment, type in the panel box, I would like to make a comment, and make sure that it's sent to all panelists. Madam President, I am seeing no public comments come in. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel box?
Please do. Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and give us the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Abstain.
Mary Jiang?
Abstain.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Abstain.
Can you repeat that, please, Mr. Jacobson?
Yes. Abstain.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Abstain.
Dee Dee Owens?
Abstain.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman? Mark Silverman?
He dropped out.
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Abstain.
And the motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Reed. So agenda item 8, B, C, and D would be the acceptance of the minutes of the December 13, 2019 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting, the acceptance of the minutes of the December 5th, 2019 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting, and the acceptance of the minutes of the October 23rd, 2019 Qualifications Committee meeting. May I have a motion to accept these three? Mr. Savoy.
Move to accept items 8B, C, and D.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. That's 8, B, C, and D. And do I have a second, Ms. Young?
Yes, second the motion to accept all three.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion amongst the members? Seeing that there is none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments.
Public comment box has been opened in the lower right-hand corner. If you would like to make a public comment, type I would like to make a public comment in that box and send to all panelists. Madam President, I am seeing no public comments. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel box?
Please do. Ms. Reed, would you please call for the vote and provide us with the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Dee Dee Owens,
Abstain.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu.
Abstain.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. And we will now break for lunch for an hour. We will reconvene at 1:15. Thank you.
I have a question of the moderator. It's a technical question.
Yes, go ahead.
Should we sign off and sign back on, or should we leave it open?
Go ahead and leave it open, and I'll put a slide up in just a second that says we're at lunch break for until 1:15.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We are going to take a quick roll call / mic check, and if you would do that for us, Ms. Reed, thank you. Nancy Corrigan. Nancy Corrigan, present. George Familek.
Present.
Mary Jiang.
Present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Present.
Dan Jacobson. Dan Jacobson.
Present.
Soshi Leon.
Here, present.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Luz Molina, present.
Carola Nicholson.
Present.
Dee Dee Owens.
Present.
Errol Pay.
Present.
Katrina Salazar. Michael Savoy.
Here.
Mark Silverman.
Present.
And Yin Tu.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I am going back to agenda item 1Q. This is Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities. We have Ms. Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations, joining us today. I believe her bio is also in your materials, members. Ms. Holmes, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your report.
Thank you so much. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, I'm a little bit, I guess you can see me a bit better. So good afternoon, board members, President Corrigan, thank you so much. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I'd like to give a special welcome again to your new board members, Dee Dee Owens and Yen C2. Welcome and thank you for your service. Congratulations on your appointments. And also welcome to your newly assigned legal counsel, Helen Joffrey. I am also brand new. I was appointed by Governor Newsom to serve as Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations beginning just June 1st. I most recently came from the Senate, where I was Legislative Director for Senator Jim Bell. Before the legislature, I served at the Secretary of State's office as Assistant Deputy. I've always been passionate about consumer protection, and I'm very happy to be here at DCA working with all the boards and bureaus. As you know, I'm part of a new leadership team. In January, Governor Newsom appointed Lourdes Castro Ramirez as the new Secretary of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Secretary Castro Ramirez assumed the position March 2nd, 2020, and previously she served as President of the University Health Systems Foundation. Also, on March 5th, Governor Newsom appointed Jennifer Simoes as DCA's Deputy Director of Legislation. And finally, on April 16th, Christine Lawley was appointed by Governor Newsom as the Chief Deputy Director of DCA, and she joined us this month. Ms. Lawley most recently served as Deputy Director for the Medical Board of California. It has been a challenging time, but our work continues, as does yours. DCA temporarily closed all offices to the public in March in response to state and local stay-at-home orders to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. DCA and the boards of bureaus have implemented telework plans, and we've required physical distancing for the employees who cannot telework. The licensing and enforcement functions at boards and bureaus are continuing to take place, though several functions are done remotely. After following a risk assessment and implementation of our COVID-19 prevention plan, DCA offices reopened to the public on June 15th. DCA has implemented preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. And we are truly grateful to you for your continued service during this difficult time, and to the staff who is being so flexible. Thank you. DCA is also continuing to work towards more efficient service. As you may recall from her January update, Director Kirkmeyer is committed to improving the regulations process and timeline. Now that she has her team in place, she will be able to devote even more time to this priority. DCA's regulations unit was created by DCA Legal to directly assist boards and bureaus with their regulations packages. For our guests who may not know, regulation development at the department involves three entities: the board and bureau staff, the department staff, and staff of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. So the department developed an online system to electronically manage and track regulations packages and streamline their review. It's called ShareWell, and ShareWell testing with a pilot cohort is now complete. There will be regular check-ins with pilot groups to solicit feedback, and the feedback will be evaluated to determine the next steps of the rollout. Our work continues even though COVID-19 has altered the way DCA does business now and the way we will do business in the future. DCA is looking at identifying areas where changes could be made on an ongoing basis and welcomes any feedback or ideas you have. I look forward to getting to know you and your programs better. I hope the day comes soon when we can meet in person. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am new, so I may not have the answer right away, but I will try to find it. I'm here to help. So thank you so much for inviting me to your meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Holmes? Seeing that there are none, Ms. Holmes, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to getting to know you better, hopefully again meeting in person someday as we continue the work of the California Board of Accountancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, President Corrigan.
Okay, I am now going to move to agenda item, 3A, report of the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Mark Silverman.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm pleased to provide the Secretary Treasurer report containing the fiscal year 2017-18 year-end financial report, the fiscal month 10 financial report for fiscal year 2019-20, and details on the $10 million loan to the general fund. The CBA has received the final year-end budget information for fiscal year 2017-18, and they reflect total revenues of $10,594,127, which is an increase of 8% over fiscal year 2016-17. The fiscal month 10 expenditure projection on page 3 reflects the most recent information available from DCA regarding preliminary expenditures through the first 10 months of fiscal year 2019-20 and projections to year end. The budget authority for the CBA for fiscal year 2019-20 was adjusted to $17,022,000. The augmentations included increases in the areas of the Attorney General costs employee compensation, retirement, and DCA pro rata. As displayed on page 3, line 48, actual expenditures as of April 30th, 2020 were $12,966,716, or 76% of the CBA budget. The CBA is currently projected to end the fiscal year with an approximate surplus of $1,200,839, or 7.2%, but this will likely change as the fiscal year end figures are received. Listed on page 4 are some highlights of key expenditure items. One additional note is that the CBA has collected over $11.2 million in revenue for the first 10 months of fiscal year 2019-20. Revenues for the rest of the year and beyond are projected to increase due to the license renewal and initial licensure fee increase to $250 that went into effect January 1 of this year. Page 8 contains an explanation of the $10 million loan to the state's general fund. Some of you will recall a previous loan a number of years ago. The fiscal crisis caused by COVID-19 and pandemic triggered the need for the state to internally borrow money from special fund departments. The CBA is one of the DCA entities that was selected by the Pooled Money Investment Board to provide such a loan. Loan is scheduled to be repaid in fiscal year 2024-25 or sooner as the economy improves and is repaid with interest. A revised fund condition statement was sent in the second mail-out. On the revised fund statement, you can see how the loan affects the CBA's reserve fund and its months in reserve. The loan amount is shown under transfers to other funds. The months in reserve shown at the bottom of the page have been correspondingly adjusted to 5.4 for fiscal year 2020-21 and 4.2 for fiscal year 2021-22. Should the CBA fund require it, early return of the loan funds can be authorized by the Director of the Department of Finance. Staff will monitor the loan obligation reports and will provide updates on the loan repayment. That includes my report. I'm happy to answer and have staff available to answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Silverman? Mr. Savoy?
Yeah, here we go again. 5.4, 4.2 is pretty ugly in terms of reserve, insofar as in most recent history, they've mandated at least a 9-month reserve. So can we anticipate if we go below 9, which I see we are on paper, that they'll give us enough money back to get our reserve to what it should be? Or they're going to tell us our reserve is inadequate enough, go raise your fees?
Ms. Pierce may have some input on that, Mr. Savoy.
Thank you. Ms. Pierce, please.
Thank you. The provision to maintain 9 months in reserve was a statutory requirement that actually got removed several years ago. So now there's a provision that caps us at 24 months in reserve. I think the guidance, I don't think it's in statute, but the guidance from finance and agency is that they like to see the months in reserve at around 3 months in reserve. That's their desire, not necessarily the Board of Accountancy's desire. A couple things that could improve the bottom line is we are seeing some additional, an increase in revenue for last fiscal year, more than, a little more than what we had projected. And we are still pursuing our fee increase for the renewal fee, which is undergoing review at the Department of Consumer Affairs. So it's possible, depending on when that hits, that would also show some improvement on our months in reserve.
Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty tenuous at best what we're sitting with right now. So I mean, we're going to have to address this at a future meeting. But I know this is not the place to bring up future agenda items, so I'll reserve it for then.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Any other comments regarding the Secretary Treasurer's report from the members? Seeing that there are none, I am moving to agenda item 4, and that will be 4A, report of the Executive Officer, Ms. Bowers.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon. I'm Patty Bowers, the board's Executive Officer. An overview of the activities that the CBA has undertaken as a result of COVID-19 pandemic is provided in your materials. During the past few months, we have faced many challenges in maintaining CBA operations. I'd like to take a moment to extend my appreciation to the members for your support, and also to the CBA staff and management team who have been accommodating and flexible during these very challenging times. Regretfully, despite our best efforts, you will hear during the division report that we are experiencing delays in our processing timeframes. I want to assure the members and stakeholders that we are working diligently to resolve the delays. We are also working closely with impacted applicants and licensees to address their individual concerns. As reported by Deputy Director Holmes, following a near 2-month stay-at-home order, the CBA reopened to the public in mid-June, and we were able to return a limited number of staff to the office. We are limiting the number of staff in the office to ensure we can accommodate social distancing guidelines and to be responsive to the governor's directive to maintain a 75% telework level. By early August, we anticipate completing the deployment of CBA-issued computers to all staff. And with this, the majority of our staff will be able to complete their work and their work duties remotely, only coming to the office to pick up and drop off materials. We are also taking steps to ensure appropriate security measures are in place to safeguard data that is accessed remotely. This concludes my report. I'll turn it back to Madam President, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Bowers regarding her report? Mr. Fox?
Hi, Jason Fox of the California Society of CPAs. I just wanted to publicly recognize the board and the board staff. I know there's been a lot of challenges from a global pandemic to budget challenges and antiquated systems, and a lot of it's out of the control of the board and the board staff. But Patty and her team have been very proactive in working with the licensee population on trying to navigate these challenges as best as possible. So we look forward to working with the board as we kind of move into this new world, but want to recognize the efforts that have been made thus far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any other comments? Seeing that there are none, I am moving on to agenda item 4B. Michael Savoy's hands up. Mr. Savoy, I notice your hand is up. Do you have a comment? Oh, thank you.
It was just stuck.
Oh, well, we like seeing your hand, so. Okay, agenda item 4B, discussion and possible action to recognize the mutual recognition agreement between the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants and the United States International Qualifications Appraisal Board. Ms. Center.
Thank you, President Corrigan. I'm Michelle Center, Licensing Chief at the CBA, and this is item 4B. This agenda item provides an opportunity for the board to discuss the Mutual Recognition Agreement, or MRA, of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, or SAICA, and to recognize its members as having satisfied the examination requirement upon successful completion of the International Qualifications Exam, or IQEX. NASBA and AICPA have jointly established the International Qualifications Appraisal Board, or IQLAB, to assist in eliminating barriers between the accounting profession of the United States and accounting professions in other countries. In order for a country to begin an MRA process, they must be sponsored by a United States Board of Accountancy who submits a formal request to IQLAB to begin the evaluation process. IQUAB's review determines whether the accountancy body's examination, education, and experience requirements are substantially equivalent to the United States established CPA licensing requirements under the Uniform Accountancy Act. If so, IQUAB negotiates an MRA and recommends adoption of the agreement by all 55 boards of accountancy. You may note that on page 2 of the agenda item, it bullets out the accountancy bodies that the CBA currently recognizes. Earlier this year, the IQUAB entered into a new MRA with SAICA, which is your attachment 1. Should the CBA adopt a position to accept the MRA, this will allow members of SAICA applying for licensure in California to satisfy the CPA exam requirement with the passage of IQUEX. As the CBA does not enter into reciprocity agreements, the applicants will continue to need to demonstrate successful completion of California's educational requirements and other licensing requirements. If the CBA adopts this recommendation, staff will send a letter to the chair of IQUAB. A draft letter is included as attachment 3 of your item. In summary, staff recommend that the CBA recognize members of SAICA as having satisfied the examination requirements under Business and Professionals Code Section 5082.3 upon successful completion of the IQUEX. This concludes my presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Corrigan and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Members, are there any questions for Ms. Center regarding her report? Ms. Tu?
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. And, this may sound very silly, but being not a CPA, I'm just curious, when you have the reciprocity recognition, how do they manage the whole educational component, continuing education component of their license?
Yes, Ms. Bowers, would you respond?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Patty Bowers. The mutual recognition agreement only satisfies the exam requirements. The individuals would still need to become licensed and then meet the continuing education requirements of each of the states that they're licensed in.
Thank you very much. That makes a lot more sense now.
Thank you, Ms. Tu. Any other comments from members or questions? And if there are none, may I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation? Ms. Leon?
I move to adopt staff's recommendation to issue a letter in regard to the matter at hand.
Thank you. And do I have a second? Ms. Young?
I'll second it.
Young, we just are unable to hear you, but I did hear a second. I'm not sure who it came from.
Mark Silverman.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. Any further discussion from the members?
Yes.
Okay. Being that there is none, I will turn it over to the moderator for public comment.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions on the screen for your reference. And just a friendly reminder to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to avoid any of that background noise. Thank you. In the ask field, typically in the lower right of your screen, type "I would like to make a public comment" and send it to all panelists. Board President, no requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and then provide us with the results?
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Dan Jacobson,
Dan Jacobson, yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I am now moving on to agenda item 4C, discussion regarding proposed updates to the California Board of Accountancy's Consumer Assistance Booklet and related website content. Ms. Pierce?
Thank you, President Corrigan. During the CBA's Leadership Roundtable in January of this year, Secretary Treasurer Silverman recommended that the Consumer Assistance Booklet be placed on a CBA meeting agenda for discussion by the CBA. In response to this, staff did some preliminary work to determine if there are ways to enhance the information and make the resources easier to access. Based on this review, staff identified that while the format of the Consumer Assistance Booklet is very comprehensive, the content and format could be changed to be more concise and in a brochure format. Likewise, in looking at the consumer portion of the CBA website, staff believes some of the narrative that presently exists in the handbook would be better placed on the website. Staff will be pursuing the changes to both the booklet and the website as identified on page 2 of the agenda item. However, we welcome additional input from the CBA. I'd also like to thank President Corrigan for identifying some minor non-substantive edits to the handbook, which we will get incorporated right away. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, are there any questions or comments or any input that we would like to give to board staff in connection with this item? Ms. Nicholson?
Thank you. I'm trying to understand, would it be helpful to show the different types of, though licenses don't distinguish between the different types of licenses that we have, whether it is an attest or not, would it be helpful to let the public know of that difference?
Can I?
Pierce?
Yes.
Please, thank you.
We do have a part in the handbook that that discusses the difference between an A license, or when an A appears on license lookup, and the G license without the attest authority. So we do have that in the handbook, and we also have that information on the website. But we can, actually, one of the suggestions that President Corrigan had was to move that up closer to the front of the handbook so that it's a little bit more easy to identify for consumers. So we're going to be working on that. If there's some specific suggestions you have that we can further highlight or enhance that information, I certainly welcome your input.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, are there any other comments for board staff on this item? Mr. Jacobson. Mr. Jacobson, I believe you're muted. Do you have comments to add?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. we got a deal on the phone. What could I say? Will the information that was in the handbook that's going to be added to the website remain in the handbook? My concern is the digital divide.
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Ms. Pierce, could you address that, please?
Sure. We're not going to keep all the current information that's in the handbook into the pamphlet just because of sizing issues. So we're going to kind of have to be strategic about what we include in the pamphlet as opposed to the website. But we certainly will make sure that it's very comprehensive to still be able to assist consumers. And I hope that was responsive to your question, Mr. Jacobson.
It was, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Tu, I think yours is a lingering hand raise unless you have further input. Seeing that there are no further comments, I'm going to move to agenda item 4D. That is discussion and possible action regarding the California Board of Accountancy 2020 Communications and Outreach Plan. Ms. Pierce?
Thank you. Agenda item 4D is the presentation of the CBA's 2020 Communications and Outreach Plan. This outreach plan provides a framework that addresses the CBA's strategic communications goals and how it intends to increase the volume and effectiveness of its activities in pursuit of those goals. As identified in the agenda item, the 2020 communications priorities have been established on a quarterly basis. With COVID, the timing of the various activities may need to be modified, and our methods of delivering key messages will likely be transitioning to a virtual platform instead of in-person events. However, even with these adjustments, staff continue to make communications and outreach a priority. I'd like to thank President Corrigan for providing some additional non-substantive edits to the communications and outreach plan. I welcome additional input from members, and that concludes my remarks, and I will turn it back over to President Corrigan for discussion and a possible motion.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, do we have any questions or comments regarding Ms. Pierce's presentation of this item? And if there are none, may I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation? Ms. Molina Lopez?
Thank you, President Corrigan. Yes, I make a motion to adopt staff's recommendation to approve this plan.
Thank you. And Ms. Salazar, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from board members? Seeing that there is none, I will turn this over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions for your reference. In the ask field, type, I would like to make a public comment, and send it to all panelists. It's just a friendly reminder to board members, once you've been called on, please lower your hand. Board President, no requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and give us the results?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Errol Pay,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yen Tu.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I am now moving on to agenda item 4E, which is an update on the California Board of Accountancy's communications and outreach. Ms. Pierce.
Thank you, President Corrigan. As identified on the report, President Corrigan spoke on behalf of the CBA at San Francisco State University on January 30th. The event, titled Student Professional Issues Update, was sponsored by Cal CPA and had over 100 people registered. In addition to the event at Cal Poly that's coming up in October, that's identified in the board agenda item, that's going to be held on a virtual platform, President Corrigan will also be participating in the Community College to CPA event that is sponsored by Cal CPA occurring in September. With COVID, many of the outreach and communications are transitioning to a virtual platform. Licensing manager Suzanne Gracia participated in a Cal CPA event called Conversations and Coffee, which focuses on a specific message towards a smaller group of attendees. Ms. Gracia answered a variety of questions relating to the CPA exam and licensure. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Cal CPA, including Jason Fox and many of his team members, including David Lowe, and I'm sure there are others. They have been an invaluable partner with the CBA. Their support and assistance, especially during these past few months, has been greatly appreciated. So thank you very much, Cal CPA. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Pierce on her report? Seeing that there are none, I am moving to agenda item 5. This is a report on our advisory committees, Enforcement Advisory Committee, Qualifications Committee, and Peer Review Oversight Committee. Agenda item 5A1 will be handled as a part of the Enforcement Division report. Agenda items B1 and C1 will be handled as a part of the Licensing Division report. That takes me to agenda item 5C2, presentation and possible adoption of the Peer Review Oversight Committee 2019 annual report. I'd like to welcome Mr. Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA Chair. Mr. DeLizer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President and members of the board. I'm Jeff DeLizer, as you mentioned, and it's my pleasure to serve as the chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank the members of my committee for their dedication over this past year to get this report together and perform these oversight activities. At our February 14th, 2020 meeting, the committee reviewed and approved the PROC 2019 annual report, which is in your materials. That annual report includes information on the various activities and accomplishments, information on the oversight functions that were performed by the PROC, and various statistical information related to peer review in California. Based on our oversight, in that annual report, the PROC concludes that the AICPA's peer review program functions effectively in accordance with the standards adopted by the CBA. The PROC recommends that the CBA adopt the 2019 annual report and continue to provide guidance to our committee concerning our oversight activities. I'd like to turn the discussion on this item back over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Mr. DeLizer. I'm currently experiencing a frozen screen, but members, and I can't see hands raised or anything. Members, if you have any questions, would you in turn direct those questions to Mr. DeLizer, please?
This is the moderator. I see no hands that have been raised. You can raise your hand and I can call on you while Board President fixes her screen. Katrina Salazar.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Mr. DeLizer and the rest of his committee for all of their hard work. As a liaison to this committee in the past, it's been gratifying seeing all the efforts they put into preparing this, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Yen Tu.
Do we need a motion for this? Because I'm happy to make the motion.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so moved then.
This is Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. I'll second.
Since Ms. Corrigan is disabled, I guess I can temporarily take over. Any public comment?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Savoy. Technical difficulties at this end. So I have a first and a second, and yes, as Mr. Savoy has mentioned, any comments from the members? And seeing that there are none, I will turn it over to the moderator for public comments.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature for public comments. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, click on the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type, "I would like to make a public comment" in the Ask field and submit it to all panelists. Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and please provide us with the results?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Mary Jiang? Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
Yes.
Errol Pay?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yen Tu.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I'm ready to proceed on to agenda item 6A, report of the enforcement chief, Mr. Franzella.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, good afternoon. I'm Dominic Franzella. I am the CBA's Chief of Enforcement. Item 6A is the enforcement activity report as of May 31st, 2020. So the activity report covers 11 months of data. So beginning on pages 1 and 2, complaints received. The CBA received just over 2,100 complaints during those first 11 months, which is a 25% decrease compared to the same period of the prior fiscal year. And while the complaints are down compared to the prior year, they are on a similar pace to what they were in 17 and 18. Moving to investigations and investigations pending on pages 3 through 5 of your report. The average day to close investigations was at 80 days, which is a slight increase of just over 2 days compared to the prior report, but significantly down when compared to the prior 2 fiscal years. Staff have closed just over 2,000 cases during the first 11 months, with 90% closed in the first 6 months and 98% closed within 1 year. On page 4, Members will note enforcement presently has 740, or not presently, at the time of May 31st, we had 741 cases in pending inventory, with the vast majority of those being less than 6 months old. An area of note is the cases over 24 months, which at that time sat at 1. For members who have been on the board for a few years, you may recall that that number sat as high as 100 plus at given points, and even as late as 2017-18 sat as high as 47. The enforcement team, and especially the investigative CPAs, whose cases are normally the more technical cases that fall into this lengthy investigatory period, have done an outstanding job in getting these matters completed. Moving on to discipline, which is pages 6 through 9 of the report. Looking first at the AG referrals, the CBA has referred 45 matters and has filed 55 pleadings, with the vast majority of them being accusations. On page 7, the CBA has had 47 matters pending at the AG's office, which is a decrease of 18 cases compared to the prior report. There's one matter over 24 months, which has a hearing set for the end of the month. Lastly, as it relates to discipline, while there are obvious impacts as a result of the pandemic, one area the CBA has been able to maintain a very active presence is in reviewing and considering disciplinary matters. This is one of the most impactful elements of achieving the CBA's mission of consumer protection. Staff have been working actively to get matters to the CBA for its review, and staff greatly appreciate CBA members taking time to cast their votes and acting on those matters. So through May 31st, the CBA has acted on 61 matters, with the CBA taking action on 21 of the matters between March and June during the pandemic and stay-at-home order. Moving on to citations and fines on page 10, through this period, we've issued just over 200 citations, with over 80% of the citations related to the minimum yearly CE requirement, commonly known as the 20 and 12. As for unlicensed activity, on page 11 of your material, through May, the CBA received 122 complaint types of unlicensed activity. We have 74 investigations pending. We've issued 15 citations, closed 211 matters, and referred 2 matters to local law enforcement or the district attorney. As for probation monitoring, this is on pages 12 and 13 of your report. We presently have 150 individuals on probation. We have been actively working to conduct probation orientations via either most likely telephonically is what we've been doing. I don't think we're doing virtual ones at this time, but we're doing telephonic ones, and we are staying on top of those particular that particular activity. And I want to say we had, it looks like 3 probation orientations that were outstanding that we plan to complete by the end of this month. We've also found 84 probation violations, with the vast majority being cost reimbursement and submitting quarterly reports. Lastly, one item we folded into this is the update on the Enforcement Advisory Committee and providing its report. The EAC held a virtual meeting via WebEx on July 9th. It was the first CBA or committee meeting held using a virtual meeting. Prior to the meeting, just as with this, staff, with the assistance of DCA Solid Team, conducted 2 training sessions on using the WebEx software. So at this time, I'd like to turn discussion on this item over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. We have a question from Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Dominique, for this report. This may not be appropriate at this time, or it may be an item for a future agenda, or future discussion, but I'm wondering whether there's been any discussion about the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic could have on continuing education completion, or requests from licensees for exceptions to their continuing education requirements, or, is this an area that we should potentially be looking to be proactive about addressing issues around, licensees having issues with completing their continuing education requirements because of the pandemic or because of the economic crisis?
Thank you, Ms. Hines. As it relates to CE and extensions, the governor issued an executive order towards the end of, I want to say it was April, maybe May, that covered a period of time for individuals who were renewing between March and April to have an extension of their CE for 6 months. And additionally, staff through the executive officer have a lot of latitude to evaluate continuing education requirements and extension requests on a case-by-case basis, and have been approving those as necessary and applicable.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we should put to one of the committees, I don't know, the Committee on Professional Conduct or maybe one of the other committees, sort of the issue of being aware of challenges that could arise with licensees not completing their continuing education, to try to maybe get ahead of these matters becoming, becoming disciplinary matters, and us, having additional, requirements or demands placed upon the board for addressing what could become an issue, for us in the next, next couple of years, based upon sort of the fallout from what's happening.
Ms. Bowers? We can definitely add a discussion item to a future agenda, but in most of the areas where there are requirements such as continuing education or deadlines with exam scores, things of that nature, there were several executive orders by the governor that did a blanket extension so that individuals were not negatively impacted. And we had the opportunity to share with the director those areas that we needed exemptions for, and those were all approved. And then again, on a case-by-case basis, I can do that under my authority for individuals, but we certainly can put maybe a larger discussion topic on a future agenda so members will be aware of all the areas that might be impacted. Thank you. Ms. Melina Lopez?
Yes, thank you, President Corrigan. Mr. Franzella, thank you for this report. I do have a question on the enforcement report on page 11. I'm trying to make sense of the numbers under outcomes. It shows that 211 were closed for compliance. And I'm trying to understand if within this period we logged 122 complaints received. What are the numbers that make up the cases that we are waiting outcomes on?
So as with any caseload, there's carryover from year to year. And so it's never going to total out in that particular instance. So we had some cases that were carryover from 18-19 that add to the total into this year. And so maybe I misunderstood the question in terms of the outcome that you're looking for then?
No, it does help. What I'm looking for, though, is that carryover number.
You're looking for the exact number?
It would be good to know how many cases are still pending outcomes.
There's 70. So the chart above it, there are presently 74 cases pending within our division related to investigations and unlicensed activity.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. If there are no further questions on the enforcement activity report, I'd like to move to agenda item 4B. Please continue, Mr. Franzella.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, good afternoon. I'm Dominic Franzella. I'm the board's Chief of Enforcement. This is CBA item 6B, discussion and possible action to conduct petition hearings pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 5115, based solely on written arguments. For this item, the CBA is being asked to determine whether to modify its process for scheduling and conducting petition hearings. Historically, the CBA conducts all of its petition hearings on the record at one of its regularly scheduled meetings. Prior to the meeting, staff would work with the petitioner on scheduling the hearing, and at the scheduled hearing, the petitioner and the Deputy Attorney General are offered an opportunity to provide oral arguments on the record. Staff would also be coordinating with the Office of Administrative Hearings to assign an administrative law judge to preside over the hearing. The ALJ, as part of his or her activities, will consider evidence for its admittance and rule on various objections raised by the parties. Also, the ALJ would be responsible for drafting a decision based on CBA's members' closed session discussions. Because of COVID-19 and the subsequent state of emergency issued by the governor, staff have begun examining various CBA-related activities that may or likely will need to be modified to continue to operate effectively and efficiently. The method currently used will likely to continue to work to some degree for a petitioner who has access to technology that will allow for the use of virtual, such as webcam or and microphone, or a telephonic participation. But with a petitioner now possibly unwilling or unable to travel, and additionally that a petitioner may not have access to this type of technology, the CBA will need to consider methods to allow a petitioner to continue to effectively and efficiently have a petition heard by the CBA. Therefore, the CBA could consider a petition based solely on written arguments submitted by both the petitioner and the Deputy Attorney General. To facilitate this method, the CBA would issue a notice of hearing, setting a petition hearing for a regularly scheduled CBA meeting. As part of that notice of hearing, it would include set dates for filing written arguments to be served on the parties, which would include the AG's office, in the event that the petitioner would prefer the CBA consider the matter via written argument. At the meeting, if the petition hearing is based on the written arguments only, the CBA will convene into closed session to discuss the matter and render a decision. So on page 4 of the item, I've outlined some questions the CBA will need to consider if allowing for petition hearings based solely on the record. And these include, will the parties, that being the petitioner and the AG's office, be provided only one submission of written arguments, or will the parties be able to offer rebuttal arguments? If a rebuttal argument is offered, will it be provided to the petitioner only, or both the petitioner and the Deputy Attorney General? Additionally, for matters that are solely based on the record, would the CBA still want an ALJ to prepare the decision, or have it performed by the DCA legal counsel? Staff are recommending that the CBA establish a protocol for allowing a petitioner to use written arguments only for purposes of petitioning the CBA. If the CBA chooses to establish a method of petition hearings based solely on written arguments, staff will begin to schedule hearings accordingly. So at this time, I'd like to turn discussions on this item back over to President Corrigan, and I'll do my best to answer members' questions.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Franzella on his report? Mr. Jacobson.
Dominic, will there? Thank you, Dominic. What's the problem with doing it telephonically, other than it's not as good as in person? But is there a problem with doing that as if someone doesn't have access to the technology that we're using?
Mr. Jacobson, presumably there would be nothing prohibiting the telephonic use, similar to even what we're doing today with the virtual, because they can call in and participate that way. The issue is potentially they may not feel comfortable in doing so. They may not have the technology to do that. That's probably less likely, but in the instances that they are unable to. So what we're really looking for is probably more of an idea of a a toolkit method here, in as much as having the ability to have as many options to allow for an individual to effectively participate and petition the board. And this would just be one additional method. We would continue to schedule them in such a manner that it would be expected or presumed that they're going to be participating in a virtual environment, whether or not with a webcam or just telephonically. But in the instances that they aren't, or uncomfortable, or maybe unwilling and don't have the technology to do so, this would just provide us that additional flexibility for the board to consider their petition packet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franzel. Any other questions on this report? Mr. Savoy?
Yeah, I think I'm just much more comfortable with it continuing to be in person, assuming we can get there again. There's something about seeing a petitioner in front of us rather than written statements that make it easier or tougher for us to make a decision regarding reduction of probation or return of license. I just think, while I understand it's another method, I just think this is certainly a heck of a lot more work for everybody. And to make a final, we are the ones that make the final decision regarding petition reinstatements. So I'm not sure how ALJ will get involved, other than now running the hearing and being our secretary when it comes to our deliberation. So this kind of process doesn't interest me at all.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Any other comments from members? Ms. Leon?
I appreciate the topic at hand and how we're brainstorming about making petition hearings more accessible. And my major call out is whatever we're doing from a digital perspective, to really consider leading with mobile solutions that are mobile friendly, as phones are more accessible than desktops. That's just one call.
Thank you, Ms. Leon. I'm not sure that I got all of that. Did anybody, I don't think we're able to hear that completely. Did anybody else hear it that can restate it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now, let me make sure, let me restate it. What I was saying is that I like the fact that we're thinking about making the petition hearing more accessible in light of the current situation that we're in and that we might be facing over the next X months. And as a result of it, I was looking at the document and the comments and how we're thinking about not just digital and on paper written, but my main point was around the digital solutions, the WebEx or whatever capabilities you roll out for the CPAs or the consumers, that they're mobile friendly and built for mobile phones, not necessarily desktop dependent, because there is a greater population that has access to a mobile phone than they do an actual desktop. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Mr. Jacobson?
Thank you. I have, as a litigator, recently come across this situation where courts are closed, or that you can't come in and that sort of thing. And well, I agree with Michael that it's best. It's so much better in person. It's better to be able to look at people in their eyes rather than in their pixel, or to be able to hear them live, hear the timbre of their voice. It is much better. If it can't be done, then second best is the type of thing that we're doing today, and third best is a telephone. I mean, things are just not. So I would put those as 1, 2, 3 as what should happen, what can happen. In person, over whether it's a laptop or a desktop or a mobile phone or just a telephone as 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Anything further from you, Mr. Savoy?
I was going to make a comment to Sochi's remark is that if he's a fellow CPA and does not have access to a desktop or a laptop, I'd be questioning that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members? Ms. Leon?
No, that's fair. Just responding back. I'm trying to make it as inclusive as possible. And as you can see, technology is not as fluid as we would hope sometimes. So make it simple.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
I just wanted to comment. I lean towards Mr. Savoy's concern about this. You know, since our responsibility is towards protecting the consumers, we want to make sure that we are, when we have a licensee who is being subject to some kind of disciplinary action, that we have an opportunity as a board or as an agency to make sure that we are really investigating and considering the complaints, thoroughly to make sure that this licensee does not become a threat to the consumers. So if there is the potential that limiting how we conduct a hearing or, sort of limiting the protocol so that we may receive less information or less opportunity to be diligent in evaluating the situation, I'm hesitant to approve that. And I agree with Mr. Jacobson's, alternatives that, maybe we rely upon, things like, telephonic hearings or, something like that if we don't have the capacity to offer full-on, web-based hearings. So, I'm hesitant to support a recommendation that we, sort of scale down to just written arguments and not giving, those who are considering these hearings a full opportunity to be really diligent in evaluating the situations that are being presented for discipline.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Ms. Nicholson?
I also just wanted to voice that I agree with Mr. Savoy's concerns as well.
Thank you. So my question is, do we have a motion? Do we want to table this for further consideration, have staff gather some more information? Your comments, please.
Nancy, I have my hand up for the last.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jacobson, please.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make clear that when I said that I think the options are best is number 1, well down the line is number 2, web access, and well down the line is number 3. But we got to do what we got to do, and I did not have a number 4. In other words, I agree with Michael that not hearing from these people and just reading from them is not the way to go.
Thank you. Ms. Tu?
Thank you. I just want to have a clarification question. This is the written argument is in addition to the other opportunity they have in terms of coming in front of the board. Is that correct?
Respond, Mr. Franzella.
the written argument would be in those instances, and again, I don't know how often it will happen. We've had a couple of individuals who we have yet to schedule petition hearings for because we didn't know how this platform would work. We had one gentleman who's already indicated he's unwilling to travel. So we already knew that was going to be a limitation. And so we were exploring methods that are allowable within the code to continue to have options to conduct the petition hearings depending on the individual circumstances. So this written argument would be in place of, potentially, depending on how the individual would submit his or her request, would be in place of any in-person, whether or not that's at some point down the line if we're actually meeting in person, or if it's on WebEx, or if it were telephonic. That said, if the board's overall kind of decision at this point is to more or less not just make it solely on the written argument, then there's really not a need for a motion or any type of change per se. We will schedule them. We'll schedule them irrespective of location, because that used to be one of the factors that would be in consideration for the individual. We would tell them when we're going to be in their area or general location, and if that was a preferred time and location for them, we will now just schedule them. Since we'll be doing virtual meetings, we will schedule them, and if they're going to participate, they will, and we'll make sure that the option, because even through WebEx you can just call in, and that can be the other method that'll be done. So there would be no action on the board's end today if they want to maintain more or less the status quo.
Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Ms. Hines, did you have something further?
Sure, I did. I would like to make a motion, and then I can speak to it after if it gets a second.
Okay, please continue with your motion.
I'd like to move that the staff present a recommendation for protocols for virtual hearings for licensees for the board to consider and adopt at a future meeting.
Thank you. And do I have a second for that motion? Ms. Molina Lopez?
Thank you. I second the motion.
Further discussion from board members?
Yes, so just continuing on, I think this discussion in this report has shown that there are still some questions outstanding about how we will conduct hearings going forward, until we have the opportunity to meet in person. And I think that it would be helpful for the public and also for licensees and the board to have some kind of process that we have put into place so that everyone's expectation can have reasonable expectations so that everyone can be prepared. And so I think that, I appreciate the staff bringing this to us as an issue. And I think that it would be helpful for us to have the staff look into, recommending another process, whether it's that we go ahead and schedule WebEx hearings and let licensees know that they need to make accommodations to be able to participate the same way that they would have to make accommodations to travel for a hearing, and provide some clear guidelines as to what those hearings would look like, and then give the CBA an opportunity to consider it to make sure that we're actually, doing our job to protect the public as well. I think that would make me most comfortable in addressing this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Members, are there any other comments? Mr. Jacobson?
It just seems like what Dominic presented is kind of what's being looked for here. That we'll just go ahead and do it, and if they can appear via web, that's fine. If they can appear in person, if they can appear via web, fine. They can also just call in.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Mr. Franzella?
Thank you, Madam President. staff stand ready to bring back an agenda item if that is the board's pleasure. However, we will have to continue to delay scheduling petition hearings, and we have individuals who have requested petition hearings at this time if we're going to wait to have some type of protocol established by the board. From where I sit today, the protocol the board has historically used would continue to be the same protocol I would be bringing forward to any future agenda item. There really wouldn't be any change in how we would go about scheduling these particular matters. The only difference would be just the internal protocols, kind of like what we're doing today with the board's meeting, in as much as how we would engage and question the petitioner, but the actual scheduling of the petitioner, the presenting of the evidence, or the written packet that you normally get, all of that would stay identical to what we were doing prior to COVID. So there really, I wouldn't be bringing forward a change in any overall practice or protocol if that's what Ms. Farrell-Hines, you're seeking to have us bring back.
My understanding from the memo, thank you. My understanding from the memo is that there was not, I mean, you were asking the board for an exception so that written arguments would only be used. My understanding with this memo is that it really is not clear. And that's why the memo was brought to us, so that there could be an exception that's created. So if there is a process that's already adequate, then what is the purpose of the memo, and what was the purpose of this recommendation for us to adopt? I mean, is it that we are being asked to, abandon the current alternative, which would be to conduct the hearings virtually and allow them to be conducted via written participation, or is it a concern that we don't really have a process yet and we're trying to come up with one? And the first suggestion was, well, let's, instead of us going through the process of doing these virtually, let's just go ahead and go with them in written. Because, the recommendation was to do written arguments only for the purposes of petitioning the CBA. And I interpreted that as being in the alternative to virtual hearings, moving everything virtually. So if I misunderstood the memo, that's fine. But I just want to be clear about what was being presented to the CBA for a vote.
Zella?
Thank you. So the recommendation in the memo was more to add to like I was mentioning earlier, add to the toolbox. We already have a process in place right now, and that, as the memo kind of outlined, that could work and that can continue to work in many instances for individuals who are in a position to participate virtually or webcast, telephonically, in those methods. But in instances where that may have presented itself a problem, we were seeking to add an alternate method as well, which would be to the extent that the individual could present what would be a petition that's based solely on written arguments only. So that way the board wouldn't have to necessarily abandon its current practice. They would still be in place. We would schedule it with the anticipation that that's how it would go forward. But in the event that the individual wanted it or preferred or was not really in a position to conduct it in a virtual platform, that they could submit written arguments only, and the board can make that the decision. So if the board, again, doesn't want to add that to the toolkit, then we don't need a motion necessarily to do anything. We will just go back to getting these scheduled. We will put them we'll issue notice to schedules. We'll tell them when the hearing is going to be. They can participate either virtually using a webcam or calling in, and the board will conduct it similar to what we're doing today in terms of how it's handling its various agenda items and how it did previously. There'll obviously be some minor changes in terms of the process, but as to getting them before the board, it would substantially be the same. This was only to add something to the toolkit.
President Corrigan, I'm sorry, to jump in. Then, my apologies. I kind of misunderstood how the discussion was going. And so I'm willing to withdraw my motion and then for us to proceed with with just, making a decision as to whether or not to vote on the staff recommendation or whether to just let it go. Thank you, Mr. Franzella, for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. And I have some other hands up, so I want to call on those in order. Ms. Salazar, okay, your hand is down. Ms. Joffrey?
Hello, thank you. I did want to clarify that Business and Professions Code 5115 already permits the board to receive and handle the issue on written argument only. It's just my understanding that this board doesn't typically use that, and so it doesn't have an established process. And like Mr. Franzella said, that this is already codified. This is already a method that is permitted to the board. But rather than waiting until the last minute, such as the governor announces that we need to minimize our internet usage because it needs to go to the schools, et cetera, that we have something in place that we can move forward to. But I did want to clarify that written argument is already codified as an option for the board.
Thank you, Ms. Joffrey. Ms. Tu?
With that clarification, I would support the recommendation to add an additional tool to your toolbox so that we can be more efficient and allow for more flexibility. So I make the motion to add this written argument to staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Tu. So the first motion has been withdrawn. We have a new motion. Do I have a second to that new motion? Ms. Young?
Yes.
Second, Ms. Young? That was a second, Ms. Young?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion from members? Seeing that there are none, I will turn it over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature on the request of the board. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with the question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions for your reference. Type, I would like to make a public comment in the ask field and send it to all panelists. Friendly reminder for board members to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Thank you. And also, if you were called on, please lower your hand. And Board President, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Ms. Reed, would you call for the vote and then let us know the result?
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Familek?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
No.
Dan Jacobson?
No.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
No.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens?
No.
Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
No.
Michael Savoy?
No.
Mark Silverman?
No.
And Yen Tu?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ms. Reed? I'm going to continue on with agenda item 7A, report of the licensing chief, licensing activity report. Ms. Center. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to. I think we have a tie. Ms. Joffrey, it appears that we have a tie vote. Please advise.
It didn't pass.
Then it,
Yeah, I believe if it's not a majority, it did not pass.
okay. The item did not pass. We had a tie, and there we have it. So we'll move forward to agenda item 7A, Ms. Center.
Thank you, President Corrigan. I'm Michelle Center, licensing chief here at CBA, and I am presenting item 7A. It is my pleasure to present to you my first ever licensing activity report. This report covers 11 months of activities beginning July 1, 2019 and ending May 31, 2020. There is also an attachment to the report provided by NASBA that depicts exam data for the fourth quarter of 2019. I want to highlight just a few items from the report. First and foremost, I understand it is a priority of this board to process initial licensing applications within 30 days. The processing timeframes in the licensing division have been significantly impacted by the stay-at-home order, which led to most staff working remotely since the middle of March. This has resulted in much longer than usual processing timelines for both examination and initial licensing applications. If you turn your attention back to page 1, data from the 11th month period ending on May 31 is depicted. It shows we received over 49,000 applications. Of those, approximately 64% were license renewal applications. It also shows that we had over 100,000 stakeholder inquiries in the form of emails or telephone calls. The report also contains trend information beginning on page 2. As documented in the report, caution should be used when interpreting the trend data regarding approval of applications, given the unexpected transition to telework impacted the ability of staff to review and approve applications. Turn your attention to page 4 of the report for an example. The report indicates a 41% decrease in the total number of initial licensing applications approved compared to the same period in 2019. When looking at that percentage, it is also important to recognize that there is a 24% increase in the number of initial licensing applications approved compared to the same time period in 2018. Given these large fluctuations, other factors such as processing of backlogged applications may be inflating the 2019 data. Turning to page 5, you may note the number of renewals reviewed is higher than the number of renewals received. This is due to increased staffing levels and also backlog resolution in that area. The LAR also contains an update on the most recent Peer Review Oversight Committee and Qualification Committee meetings. The Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting was held on February 14, 2020 at the CBA office here in Sacramento. The PROC discussed and provided feedback regarding the approval of its 2019 PROC annual report, which was presented and approved as agenda item 5C2, I think. The May 8, 2020 PROC meeting was canceled, but the next PROC meeting will be held virtually, and it is scheduled for August 14, 2020. The Qualifications Committee was held on January 22, 2020 in Southern California. It was an off-cycle subcommittee meeting that was also held, and that was on January 15, 2020. During that off-cycle meeting, they reviewed a total of 16 Section 69 reviews. The April 29, 2020 QC meeting was canceled. The next subcommittee meeting will be held virtually on August 12, 2020. That concludes my presentation as a licensing activity report. President Corrigan, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Center. Are there any questions for Ms. Center from board members regarding her report? Seeing that there are none, thank you very much. And I'm proceeding on to agenda item 9, other business. 9A, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. 1, report on meetings of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants attended by the California Board of Accountancy representative. A is Business Environment and Concepts Subcommittee. You probably recognize that as a portion of the CPA exam. Earlier in the year, I was appointed to this subcommittee, and duties include reviewing and approving exam questions for technical accuracy, appropriateness for newly licensed CPAs. That's a 1 to 2 year person. For conformity with exam blueprint specifications, it involves ensuring that the questions are testing the knowledge of the candidate, but not fooling them with distracting information. That subcommittee sets strategic direction based on standard-setting developments and other trends in the accounting profession. We monitor the overall health of the inventory of CPA exam questions for this exam section to ensure that the requirements of the exam blueprints are followed. Thus far, we've had a number of recurring teleconferences to review the inventory of questions, and we will continue to do that and work through that backlog. I have to say I'm quite impressed with the complexity of the CPA exam development and monitoring process. Thank you. Agenda item 9A1B will be handled with agenda 9B4. Agenda item 9B, NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancies, 1, 2, and 2A will be handled in addition under agenda item 9B4. Agenda item 9B2B, Continuing Professional Education Committee. Under my name, there is no report. I've not had a meeting since our meeting in January. So I'm going to move now to agenda item 9B3, report of the Western Regional Meeting held virtually, and that was on June 3rd. Myself and some board staff attended that virtually. A few of the topics that were covered were the evolution of the CPA profession, the next steps to be taken, Uniform Accountancy Act, proposed model rules, staff augmentation and independence, COVID-19's impact on boards, firms, licensees, and candidates. You can see my written report in the materials. Today, we are very fortunate to have Daniel J. Dustin, CPA, Vice President of State Board Relations of NASBA, joining us to provide an update on NASBA's activities and answer any questions members may have regarding topics that were covered during the Western Regional Meeting. You can see Mr. Dustin's bio in your materials. So I would now like to invite Mr. Dustin to unmute his microphone and begin with his presentation. Mr. Dustin?
Thank you, Madam President. I have to tell you, you did an excellent job in summarizing the regional meetings that we held in early June. What I wanted to do is perhaps give you an update of things that are continuing to happen. Certainly COVID-19 is having a significant impact in a lot of ways on boards of accountancy. With respect to the CPA pipeline, certainly the closure of Prometric test centers for approximately 2 months had a significant impact on testing. Generally, most states extended notices to sit in conditional credit until December 31st. Some smaller, lower volume states with respect to candidates are addressing these extensions on a case-by-case basis. Prometric test centers began to open in mid-May, taking precautions when they did reopen, including social distancing, lessening existing capacity so that in order to address that, Prometric extended test center hours and opened their test centers on weekends as well. As a result, capacity in some instances went to more than 100% of the usual testing capacity. Certainly, boards are now receiving, in some states, requests to extend conditional credit into 2021 and some are hesitant to do so at this point, feeling that it may be too soon, that we don't know what's going to continue to happen with COVID-19, that we're only in July. In addition, certainly some test center locations are being impacted by social unrest, mainly in urban areas. So we continue to monitor the availability of test centers throughout the country and work with Prometric to address any volume concerns as they arise. Earlier today, you had a discussion of CP evolution. Certainly that has been an initiative that's been going on for more than 3 years as a joint initiative of the AICPA and NASBA. An exposure draft was released on May 26th with a comment period ended on August 31st. I know you're working on a comment letter and we look forward to receiving that. One of the main things that we're working on as we move forward, considering this initiative, are resources that would be available to schools. Certainly larger schools tend to view the proposed changes to education and the examination in a positive light because they can now dedicate tracks of learning toward the disciplines that have been proposed in the model. Smaller schools are certainly concerned that they may not be able to handle 3 disciplines, so they're looking perhaps at 1 discipline or 2 disciplines, or working with other schools in their area to provide the students with the ability to obtain the necessary coursework to prepare for the exam and licensure. We're in the process right now working with the AICPA to establish education task forces, task force that'll focus on the core as well as the 3 disciplines. Those resources will include model curricula as well as model internship program. One of the things we heard from the education advisory group that was established back in January was that there are times when professors will have students come back to campus in the fall seeking to have their summer jobs count toward internship credit. So one of the things that exists in the proposed model rules is that internships be pre-approved by faculty or the department prior to actually the student engaging in those activities. One of the other things that's important to note with respect to the proposed model rules is that only 8 jurisdictions were identified as needing either law or rule changes. 1 state would require a law change, and that state actually acknowledges that it's easier to change the law in their jurisdiction than it is the statute. And 7 jurisdictions needed to change their rules. One of those jurisdictions was New York, and they actually passed an emergency regulation that was effective July 1st. So they've already addressed the issues with respect to changing or eliminating the naming of exam sections in their rules. So we're actually down to 7 at this point. With respect to the exam, testing in India began in June, and it's scheduled to occur again in September. And we announced earlier this week that the exam will also be given in December. There's a lot of interest from candidates in India due to the outsourcing of work by U.S. CPA firms to that country. The other item that's of significant interest is remote testing. The AICPA continues to work on the ability to provide the exam remotely in emergency situations like COVID-19. NASBA conducted a webinar a few weeks ago for executive directors around the country to hear a presentation by Prometric and the AICPA to discuss what they envision. Significant concerns were raised by executive directors on that call about security, the availability and the compatibility issues with respect to computer equipment that candidates may or may not possess in order to take the exam remotely. Right now, as you may know, all exam equipment in Prometric test centers is uniform throughout the country. Another concern is ADA accommodations, especially if the candidate needs to have someone on site to provide that accommodation. There's a hesitation to place someone in a candidate's home to provide ADA accommodations. So those discussions will continue. The next item I want to just touch on briefly is staff augmentation and independence. Back in the fall, the AICPA's Professional Ethics Examinations Committee issued an exposure draft entitled Staff Augmentation. It would be an interpretation to the existing AICPA Code of Professional Conduct that would allow a CPA firm's staff to work for and attest client where they would be supervised by that client. NASBA raised concerns with its response to that exposure draft. Subsequent to that, there were discussions with the AICPA's Professional Ethics Executive Committee task force that was charged with looking at staff augmentation. Some changes were proposed. However, at its January 2020 meeting, the NASBA Board of Directors voted to oppose staff augmentation. Discussions by the Professional Ethics Executive Committee task force continued into the spring. And the NASBA Ethics Committee reviewed and did not support ongoing proposals from the task force, instead agreeing with the NASBA Board of Directors position. There were, again, extensive discussions at the NASBA regional meetings in June, and we found that almost all boards agreed with the NASBA position to oppose the staff augmentation interpretation. At this point, the Professional Ethics Executive Committee, or PEEC's, task force is making revisions to its proposal, and we expect that they will make a presentation at the August 11th Professional Ethics Executive Committee meeting, where that committee may vote to re-expose the exposure draft. We anticipate that the NASBA Ethics Committee will meet shortly after that release to discuss the draft and draft a comment letter that will follow then through the normal NASBA review channels, including going through the Regulatory Response Committee as well as the regional directors before it actually goes to the NASBA chair and CEO for possible signature. The goal is to have a final letter early enough in the process that boards of accountancy can consider NASBA's position should they decide to comment to the Professional Ethics Committee as well. On another topic, certainly the Alliance for Professional, Licensing, ARPL is the acronym, continues to work to get the message out about the need and public benefit of responsible professional licensing. Certainly with COVID-19 and some orders that have lessened professional licensure standard in some states and in some ways, the focus is highlighting the benefits of professional licensure, including things like mobility. The CPA profession is unique among the licensed professions in that individuals licensed in a jurisdiction can practice through mobility in another jurisdiction, being subject to the regulation of the board where they're practicing. There are a number of other professional professions that are interested in that model and continue to look at it. And certainly the object of a lot of what the Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensing is doing is to counteract the universal licensure proposals that are out there in a couple of states right now. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about, the breakout sessions, and certainly there was a lot of feedback about the impact that COVID-19 has had on state finances and the possibility that fund balances may be swept or loaned to offset state budget shortfalls. There was also discussion about the extent of remote workplace, the extent of staff working remotely in many jurisdictions. Another topic that's come up recently is the fact that many jurisdictions may face travel restrictions, either with or without budget dollars attributed or appropriated to travel to meetings. So we continue to monitor that. As you may know, the NASBA annual meeting will be conducted virtually in early November, Another thing I wanted to mention to you is that new board member orientation. Now you have a couple of new board members who were appointed recently. New board member orientation will be conducted in August. I believe the date is August 20th, and more information will be coming out about that. So that's a quick overview and update of some of the things that are going on. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and I really hope I can address any questions you may have of me as well. Again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Dustin. We really appreciate all of that information. It's very useful to us. And at this time, members, do we have any questions for Mr. Dustin regarding anything regarding the NASBA activity? Seeing that I have none, thank you again so much. We really appreciate your time and for joining us.
Thank you very much.
With that, I will be moving to agenda item 10, closing business. And I will like to turn the program over to the moderator for any public comments.
This is the moderator. I'll be opening the Q&A feature for public comment. It has been opened. So members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, click on the icon with the question mark located within a square at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'm sharing the instructions on the screen for your reference. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen, type, I would like to make a public comment, and send it to all panelists. So I see Jason Fox, his hand is up.
Hi, Jason Fox with Cal CPA. I just want to congratulate the board on your very first virtual board meeting. I thought it went well, and so it's a major accomplishment. I know Ms. Bowers, our team, worked very hard to make it happen. So from the stakeholder perspective, everything worked great, and it sounds like this is something that we'll get used to going forward, but well done.
Board President, no further requests were submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. And Mr. Fox, your comments are much appreciated, and we thank you for them. Moving on to agenda item 10B, agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Do I have anything from the members? Mr. Jacobson.
I reiterate the request that I've made for a long time that we have a agendized item on what a substantial relationship to the practice of accountancy means, at which I would like to give a presentation and invite others to also give a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Any other suggestions from board members for future agenda items? Mr. Savoy.
Yeah, I mentioned it before, but I'd like to make sure we get something about the budget and reserve to deal with that again.
Thank you. I believe staff noted that, but it's good to hear again as it's a very crucial item for our operations. Any other items for future agenda items, board members? Ms. Hines?
Yes, it's an agenda item, sort of, but I wanted to commend Patty Bowers on her report about the operations and keeping the board informed. And I just wanted to add about keeping us informed about how it's going for the staff under the, restrictions that have been imposed. And I just wanted to remind and invite her to, please come to us if the staff is experiencing any, additional undue burdens or impacts based upon the, quarantine orders and the restrictions on coming into the office. I know that, the state has been, the Board of, the Bureau of Consumer Affairs has been responsive in providing resources for the staff to ease their ability to work under the current restrictions. But I know that sometimes staff is hesitant to voice their needs and to express where they're, maybe, unduly bearing the burden of having to accommodate working from home or moving back and forth or upgrading their resources to perform their work and just sort of generally doing work, more work than they might be doing under normal circumstances. And so I just want to make sure that Ms. Bowers and the staff know that they should be bringing those issues to us so that we can try to be supportive of them in whatever way is possible, making sure that their issues are addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. That's an excellent comment with which I believe we all concur. And again, so appreciate CBA staff's effort in enduring these very trying and difficult times. I see, Ms. Zhang, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to sort of ask staff and Ms. Bowers to sort of keep on updates. Remember, we had the motion before to have legislative approved a way of allowing students to take their CPA exam before degree conferral, but I understand it's been placed on hold due to COVID-19. It might come back in September, depending on the legislative, or might be pushed into 2021, which I understand, but I just wanted to sort of make sure that that's not forgotten or fall through the cracks, somehow be put on the reminder for future action.
Thank you, Ms. Jiang. There are no other comments from the board. We're getting ready to move into closed session. And so this is a notification that at this time the board will convene into closed session after having deliberated on all of the open session items except for adjournment. Due to technological limitations, adjournment will not be broadcast. Adjournment will immediately follow closed session. There will be no other items of business discussed. So at this time, we're taking a 15-minute break to have a break and also ready ourselves for closed session. Please return to your monitors timely so that we can complete our closed session business for today. So it's 3:21, so exactly 15 minutes after, we need to start up again. Thank you.